This is Atomic Shinobi, and today I'm going to narrate what if Naruto accidentally goes to Attack on Titan universe after Pain Invasion. If you enjoy this video, please like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Not wasting any more time. Let's start the story.
Naruto was worn out. He had just concluded his conversation with Nagato, the real pain. While he was training to become a Toad Sage and use the Sage mode in Jutsu, Nagato, Konan, and the 6 puppet corpses he uses as power mediums attacked Konoha, his home village. Naruto came and battled Nagato after he used all of his strength in a single, powerful Shinra Tensai, a repelling gravity attack, to turn Konoha into a huge crater. Naruto defeated all but the strongest path, the Diva path, thanks to his skillful fighting and mastery of natural energy. However, he was so worn out that he was defeated and restrained. Hinata arrived to attempt to save Pain after he disclosed his plans for peace. She told him she loved him, but Pain got tired of her interruption and hit her. This caused Naruto to lose control of his anger, which in turn affected the Kyuubi no Kitsune, his tenant. He eventually reached the six-tailed state as a result of his fury, forcing him to absorb an increasing amount of Kyuubi's power. In an attempt to murder Pain, he charged at him while in a berserker state. Pain repeatedly repelled him in an attempt to wear him out, but he fought like an animal. Pain stopped him before he could charge an Amari, menacing ball, which resulted in a misfire and explosion outside the village. Naruto pursued Pain as he withdrew. However, Shibaku Tensai, planetary devastation, was Pain's final weapon. He made a miniature moon by launching a ball of condensed gravity into the sky, with Kyuubified Naruto in the middle. However, Naruto's anger persisted, which led him to accumulate more strength and enter the eight-tailed state. Naruto's father, the Yondaime Hokage, intervened to prevent him from becoming the Kyuubi and releasing it from its seal just when it appeared hopeless. In their conversation, he explained to Naruto how he had sealed a portion of his chakra inside the seal as a safety measure in case the Kyuubi threatened to escape. He also talked about the masked man, who is the real leader of Akatsuki and is accountable for the Kyuubi attack. After fixing the seal, he gave Naruto words of encouragement and expressed his belief in him as he started to fade away. After fixing the seal, Naruto reverted to his former self and confronted the Diva path once more. Once he vanquished him, he located the real Pain and confronted the man responsible for destroying his house. It was not what he anticipated. The extremely pale and malnourished red-haired cripple, who had multiple rods stabbed into his back and was in some sort of walker, was standing next to Konan. Naruto used the same words he used to tell Jiraiya about finding peace to persuade Nagato to believe in him. After they engaged in a heated argument about it, Nagato killed himself by using the last of his chakra to use the 7th path, Geto path, Rinne Tensai, to bring all of the victims of his attack back to life. In order to rebuild it and support Naruto in his pursuit of peace, Naruto allowed Konan to return to Omegakure. We return to his current location once he has completed his battle for the village and built a temporary grave for Jiraiya. Naruto is stumbling through the Konoha forest in an attempt to return home and check on everyone's survival. His black and orange tracksuit is severely damaged. His right sleeve is ripped off, exposing the short sleeve of the metal mesh shirt he wears beneath his black t-shirt. At the moment, the tracksuit is unzipped, exposing the black t-shirt with the orange Konoha flame symbol. He anticipates having some tears in his orange pants and a few holes in his jacket, shirt, and metal mesh shirt from where Nagato stabbed him with his rods. He is so excited to get home, change, and soak in the hot springs. However, he is worn out from fighting and using so much chakra he is having trouble walking, his eyelids are heavy, and he is most likely going to faint. He was about to pass out when he was grabbed by someone. When he turned to face the individual, he was surprised by what he saw. The masked man he had recently encountered while searching for Sasuke in Akatsuki robes was there, grabbing him by the collar again. What was his name? Toby. He exclaimed, "Found you," with far too much joy. Naruto barely had enough strength to fight, and his eyes widened in shock. He winced at his misfortune after saving the village and winning the battle of his life. He is taken prisoner by this man? How did he earn this? Bastard, I didn't really hear you. What was that, Kyuubi? The masked man asked in a childlike tone as he leaned forward and cupped his hand around his ear as if to hear him better. You bastard. Just what are you people? Are people's lives just toys to you? We are people too. We aren't biju or sacrifices for your own goals. We have our own thoughts and dreams. What gives you the right to take that from us? Naruto yelled with rage. After panting and attempting to level his breathing, he started to shake with anger when he recalled his father's words about how he was to blame for the Kyuubi attack. When he realized what that meant, he opened his eyes in disbelief. He is also accountable for the death of his father and possibly his mother if he was the one who carried out the attack. In an attempt to control his anger and soothe his feelings, he bit his lip, but this was simply too much. His body was screaming at him to attack this man. And he shivered with anger. Why? He ground out, gritting his teeth. He heard a dark chuckle that was very different from the childish one he had heard earlier. Why? Why not? The masked man asked in a darkly amused tone. After noticing Naruto's angry and incredulous expression, he then laughed again and waved his finger in front of his face, saying, "For peace, of course, the moon's eye plan." Naruto could only stare in shock. What? In response to Naruto's startled silence, he said, "Yes, I'll capture all the Biju and recombine them to what they once were. The Jubi. Then I will become its Jinchuriki and then reflect a Jubi-powered Tsukiyomi off the moon, to trap the world in an eternal Tsukiyomi Genjutsu." He then joyfully dropped Naruto, raised his hands, and concluded, "It will be a world with no more wars, no more conflict, no more tears, no winners, and no losers, a world of truth and no lies. That is the moon's eye plan." "You are insane. That isn't peace, it's all fake. No one would be really living if it's all an illusion. There is no meaning in that, it's a coward's way out." Naruto began to scream. He just finished dealing with a delusional madman, and he barely defeated him and made him realize his mistakes. Now he has to deal with another one right away. Goddammit. I'm going to track down Murphy and fucking kill him because of that shit law of his and the reason it keeps happening to me. He was furious in his thoughts. Before shrugging and bending to grab Naruto by the collar, the man appeared to glare down at him. He then said, "I didn't ask for your opinion. I am simply letting you know what you will bring about. Now then, I believe it's time I take the Kyuubi." But when he heard the cry, "Reikiri," he leapt back, not out of need but just to take stock of the situation. Kakashi seized Naruto and handed him over to a hastily constructed shadow clone. Kakashi confronted the masked man as the clone fled, pulling his headband up to show his Sharingan and giving him a fierce glare. "Are you sure that was a good idea? You don't have his reserves to make shadow clones as efficiently, let alone using that eye? I'm not letting you take Naruto." Before swirling out of view, the masked man shot back, "As if you have a say in the matter." In an attempt to save his student, Kakashi swore and fled back to his clone. With Naruto on his back, the Kakashi clone was currently running as quickly as possible to reach the village with reinforcements. However, the masked man slashed downward, forcing him to halt and turn around. Knowing that he couldn't fight with Naruto on him, he continued to run to the village. After avoiding another cut, he saw a chain that was about to encircle him and attempted to break free. He was squeezed and wrapped until he poofed away with a curse, but it was too late. The man approached Naruto, who collapsed to the ground, cursing his inability to move as he pleased. The man said, "Now that he is out of the way, let's go." In a phony upbeat tone, he then attempted to grab Naruto once more, but he stopped and placed his hand to his chin in a fervently contemplative position before adding, "But just to be safe from any interruptions, I think I will hide you away for now." He knelt down and fixed Naruto with his gaze. The Sharingan in Naruto's mask's soul eyehole changed from the typical 3 tomos to a 3-bladed shuriken-like shape that also looked like a pinwheel. All around him, suddenly, things started to swirl. Then Naruto recalled that this was the same thing this guy used to do when he would teleport away from them during his recent search for Sasuke. "I guess he's attempting to teleport me. If I can avoid it." "No," Naruto pondered. In an attempt to move his body, he started calling forth whatever chakra he could find inside of himself. He even attempted to absorb some of the Kyuubi's power. When the masked man known as Tobia, who was actually Uchiha Obitoa, saw the chakra forming around Naruto, he initially mocked the boy for attempting to flee. Then, however, he sensed something was wrong with his Kamui. It was extremely unstable. He attempted to stabilize and continue the technique because he couldn't stop it for fear of killing the Jinchuriki. However, it was excessive. The obstinate blonde was ruining it. He saw Naruto suddenly spin off into his dimension. Hopefully he didn't like the way that Fox's chakra was turning the swirl red. However, he stood up when he noticed Kakashi approaching. In order to conceal his genuine feelings for him, he gave him a lighthearted salute before whirling away in his own personal teleport. As he attempted to process the situation, Kakashi just collapsed to his knees, his eyes wide with shock. Naruto must have been taken by that man and he was to blame. Another comrade was lost, and as a result, another name would be added to the memorial stone. He can't give up. No, before it's too late. He must locate Naruto. However, he must first deliver the Nuzo. And they were all arranged at the door to welcome and applaud Naruto as well. He did not look forward to the remainder of the day as he trudged forward with his head lowered. In front of Zetsu, Tobi reappeared in one of his numerous hiding places. Zetsu sensed his comrade's excitement and, dare he say it, anticipation. He grinned and thought, "I guess that means he was successful." "So were you able to get him after the fight?" "Yes, I was about to check on him within my dimension. I also want to ask him how he was able to convince Nagato to betray me." He finished with a dark look in his only visible eye. "Yeah, go ahead," Zetsu said, simply nodding. Nothing is going on right now that I know of. Obito swirled to his dimension after nodding his head. He searched for his guest as he entered his dimension of many rectangular prisms in the black emptiness, but he didn't see him right away. His stomach flipped uneasily as the thought of the Kamui going awry started to float through his head. Despite his best efforts to broaden his senses, he was unable to sense him. When he realized he had lost the Kyuubi, his eyes widened in anger. He let out a single burst of chakra and yelled in annoyance and rage as an explosion occurred where he stood. He removed his mask to show his partially scarred face and his implanted Sharingan eyes. Damn it, damn it. Damn it. He shouted again. After all of his preparations, sacrifices, and hard work, one error could potentially ruin everything. Madara assured him that the world where Rin lives, where Team Minato is still alive, where there is peace, and where war never breaks out, would never come to pass. Tears started to well up in the corner of his eyes, and he muttered, Rin. Naruto opened his eyes and shut them right away. He had no idea where he was, but he was aware of how incredibly annoying that dumb sun was. Through those enormous ass trees, the sun was shining down on him. He stopped thinking and opened his eyes slowly to take in his surroundings. These trees didn't seem familiar to him at all, though Kakashi-sensei did tell him about the land of grass and how large and strange the plants and trees were there. They were larger than any trees he had seen in the elemental nations. So, is he in Kusa? Does he live close to Kusagakure? He was sent where by that masked nutcase? Nothing that looked like a hideout for a malevolent villain caught his attention. It was overly vivid and full of greenery. More darkness and gloomy-looking caverns were required, similar to the one in which the Ichibi were removed from Gaara. Nor has he heard any malicious laughter when they believe they are winning or in control of the situation. Every adversary he has faced seems to laugh in front of him. Naruto rose from the ground and surveyed the area. He felt as he stretched that half of his chakra was restored, or full capacity for normal Jonins. He looked around and rushed up the closest tree. When he reached the summit and looked around, he saw that there were no living things within his line of sight. He made the decision to leap back down to the tree's strongest and widest branch and take a lotus position in order to search for life. He entered Sage mode and summoned the natural energy of his surroundings. When he first started looking for chakra signatures, he could only detect a few low signatures in the area, which most likely indicated that they were wildlife. However, a few miles away, he detected a couple signatures that were roughly high genin level. With a resigned sigh, he got up to go look at these signatures and perhaps ask for more details. In order to get closer to the signatures, he hopped from branch to branch. Naruto has now witnessed some bizarre occurrences: giant animals that could speak, a snake man who shed his skin in order to vomit up a new body, and even a giant fox that he conversed with in his head. The fact that the terms normal and impossible are not found in a shinobi's dictionary is the only reason he knows he is not insane. He was therefore less alarmed and perplexed than most people would be when he discovered the signature's location and looked down from his branch to see three oddly proportioned, sexless, human-like giants that ranged in height from 20 to 40 feet. He just perspired in a mix of anxiety and bewilderment. They typically have eerie smiles on their big faces that display their unusually sharp teeth, so you can't really blame him for being anxious or even a little afraid at first. One even had what appeared to be dried blood all over its hands and mouth. He leapt away from those enormous objects after shaking himself out of his daze. If all those unintelligible moans were any indication, not to mention the foolish looks on their eerie blood-stained faces, they would obviously be of little assistance in providing information. He hopped from tree to tree for a few minutes, then sat down on another branch and focused again. He delved further into his senses to look for more indications of life. He felt nothing for 10 minutes, only the occasional small group of high genin level signatures that he dismissed as potential giants. From civilian to chunin level signatures, it was a sizable collection of swiftly moving signatures. He estimated that they were traveling on smaller animal level signatures and were between 15 and 20 miles away. Thus, they were traveling at nearly 20 miles per hour while mounted on an animal. After giving himself a nod, he started to approach them in the hopes of locating himself. The task of exploring and eventually reclaiming human territory from Titan-infested land falls to the military division known as the Scouting Legion. They ventured into the territory beyond the wall before Wall Maria was breached, but they were never able to go very far because of Titan casualties. In an effort to seal the breach and recover Wall Maria, supplies are currently being laid down from Wall Rose Trost District to Wall Maria Giganshina District. Commander Erwin Smith is in charge of them. He is about 6 feet 1 inch, has side-combed blonde hair, and has blue, almost gray eyes. He is stoic, serious, and generally grim. He cares about his men, but he is prepared to sacrifice them for the sake of humanity. Since Wall Maria was breached 3.5 years ago, they have lost all of the progress they had made outside of it. If they ever want to scout out there again, they must retake the entire area between the two walls, which will likely take a few decades. Erwin leads the formation back to Wall Rose at Trost because they are almost out of supplies for this expedition. Erwin has seen more of the world than anyone in the military, but based on the legends he has heard, that isn't much at all. He has seen only forests and the occasional lake, but he still wants to share it with the rest of humanity and protect it from the Titans, from despair, and from annihilation. He will stop at nothing to ensure that humanity is safe outside the walls. His thoughts are interrupted when Mike Zacharias approaches him on horseback and declares, "There is someone coming fast from the east." A person? The Titans and the occasional Scouting Legion expedition should be the only people standing between Wall Maria and Rose, Erwin asks, raising an eyebrow. He says grimly, "Yes, it doesn't smell like a Titan, or anyone from our expedition." Known for his apathetic demeanor, dirty blonde hair, light mustache, and goatee, Mike Zacharias is regarded as the second strongest man in the Legion. He has a habit of sniffing anyone he first meets, and then, for some reason, smirking. He has an extremely keen sense of smell, and can smell Titans and other things from a great distance. He ponders for a few seconds before asking, "Are there any Titans nearby?" After closing his eyes and taking a large sniff and several smaller ones, Mike says, "No, we should be fine, and there haven't been any signals from our flanks." Erwin gives a nod of comprehension, then draws his smoke flare gun, points it to the right, and fires. The formation is alerted to follow him and move to the right by the green smoke flare that is released, and the other flares from the formation demonstrate their comprehension as he makes his way to the enigmatic individual between the walls. "Let's go, Mike. Lead the way to the anomaly," he says. "Yes, Commander." With his arms flowing behind him and Sage Mode still engaged, Naruto is currently running across a plain. He senses the group approaching him. Perhaps they have a sensor, but that doesn't explain why they would drop what they were doing to come find him. A cloud of dust appears in front of him after he has been complaining to himself for a few minutes, trying to make sense of his predicament. Since the signatures were coming from that direction, it is possible that they were kicking up dust on the animals they were riding, such as horses. Instead of running at them and coming across as a threat, he made the decision to slow down and stop. After waiting for the group for a few minutes, he was finally able to make out a few details before they all pulled up to stop close to him, but not close enough to be in range, apparently. They were all wearing green cloaks, which had a symbol on the back and a smaller patch on the shoulders that resembled two wings, one blue and the other white, with the white slightly overlapping the blue. The cloaks themselves had a brown khaki-colored long-sleeved jackets that were open and stopped at the midriff. Fortunately, they had shirts underneath, unlike Sai, which made Naruto shiver in disgust. If they were women, though, that's fine with him. From what he could see, they were all wearing harnesses strapped all over their bodies, from their boots to their shoulders, with an odd-looking device around their hips and lower back. They all appeared tense, and their hands were close to the apparatus. One even had a grip on the long metal box on his hip, as though he were going to draw a sword or something. Oh, they must be weapons, huh? Naruto thought. What do you know? I found some soldiers. With a bored expression on his face, a soldier who was only slightly over 5 feet tall approached Naruto on horseback and said, "Oi, brat," in an irritated tone. "Who are you? How come you're out here?" Corporal Levi is the guy with the bad attitude. He has black hair in a bowl cut that is parted down the middle, and he has sharp black eyes hidden behind his bored-looking face. He usually speaks as if he is irritated with something, sometimes even blunt and unapproachable, though this could be due to his reputation as a clean freak, and his past in the underworld of the big cities. Despite all of this, he values the lives of his comrades and is regarded as the strongest soldier in the Scouting Legion. Despite his short stature, ironically, you don't need to be tall to kill Titans. "My name is Uzumaki Naruto." Naruto responded with a strained smile after receiving a tick mark over his eye for the crude remark. "And well, that's what I was going to ask you." After calming himself with a deep breath, he went on, "Where am I? Do you know how I can return to Konoha, and what land is this?" "Well, I have never heard of Konoha," Levi said, raising an eyebrow and turning to face his commander, who nodded slightly before turning back to him. "We haven't. Regarding your location, you are north of Shiganshina and south of Trost, not far from the forest of enormous trees. In essence, you are situated between Wall Rose and Wall Maria." Naruto became increasingly anxious as the grumpy man in front of him continued his explanation. How far away was he from home that nobody knew what Konoha was? Everyone knows what that is. "Are you implying that you are unaware of the elemental nations or the land of fire?" With a desperate tone, he demanded. "No, I haven't," Levi said, his brows furrowed. "They have plenty of eccentric members, so perhaps they shouldn't be calling him crazy." No, this can't be happening." Naruto was panicking in his head. And his face was displaying it as well. This caused some of the members to feel anxious, perplexed, curious, tired, and simply that he was crazy. "Hey, brat," a deep, familiar voice bellowed in his mind. Naruto snarled back, "What do you want, to rub it in? That I'm so far from home that nobody knows what it is?" Kyuubi growled back, "Watch your mouth, you whiny brat. I'm trying to let you know that I think we are in another dimension." "What do you mean?" inquired Naruto. "I mean, that when you tried to escape that Uchiha's space-time jutsu, I think you disrupted it to the point that we were either sent through time, or we were flung into another dimension." Kyuubi sighed quietly and complained about foolish containers. "I honestly don't know what to do with you. Should I thank you for avoiding detection, or should I eat you for getting us in this mess by flaring my chakra?" Kyuubi asked. With a melancholy tone, Naruto uttered, "So I was sent to the future or past, or I was sent to another dimension. Fuck." "Hey, brat, don't space out on me," Levi said, irritated that the seemingly disoriented child in front of him was ignoring him. Swiftly shaking his head and feigning a smile, Naruto said, Sorry, I think I hit my head a little too hard." Even though Levi and a few others knew he was lying, they chose not to confront him about it, instead choosing to question him later, in private, and under greater security, just in case. "Well, come with us if you want to make it to the closest city. There isn't anything out here but us and Titans," Levi said, turning to face the blonde adolescent in front of him after receiving a subtle nod and glance from his commander. "So follow us on one of our extra horses." As they started to move, Naruto asked, "Those giant, stupid human-looking things are Titans, right?" After nodding appreciatively and clumsily mounting the offered horse. "Yeah, they always seem to have the stupidest expressions on their faces," Levi complained in his typical irritated manner, raising a subtle eyebrow in confusion along with everyone in earshot. This caused some people nearby to smirk. "Did you spot some here?" he asked nonchalantly, but it was clear from the look in his eyes that he was looking around him and at the teenager in front of him for danger. As he grimaced and tried to settle into his horse, Naruto nodded absently and gradually increased his speed to keep up with the others. "Why yeah," he stumbled as he leapt on his horse, which was starting to gallop alongside the others. There were 3 of them, about 20 to 40 feet tall. However, I was able to elude them and they were unaware of my presence. Levi silently evaluated the teenager as he looked at him out of the corner of his eye. Titans have pretty good instincts, so it's impressive that he avoided drawing their attention. Even if they aren't sentient, he managed to sneak past 3 of them, a 12-meter class among them, and who knows how many others he has managed to avoid out here on his own. "You managed to sneak past a group of Titans without using a 3D maneuver gear or even a horse?" asked Petra Rahl, a small woman with hazel eyes and shoulder-length honey-colored hair, overhearing the conversation next to her. "That is quite remarkable." "What is so impressive about that? I have 27 solo kills, so the brat snuck by some Titans. That's not a big accomplishment, Petra," scoffs Oro Basard, a nearby soldier in the same squad. He is about 5 feet 6 inches and has brown hair in a messy style similar to Levi's. His tone is a little like Levi's. Petra reprimanded Oro wearily, "Oro, stop trying to imitate Corporal Levi." Ignoring her, he continues to speak down to Naruto, saying, "Just remember, brat, compared to me," but is cut off when he bites his tongue and bleeds actually, quite a bit. Everyone around Naruto seemed indifferent to the fact that this arrogant man had just bitten his tongue and was bleeding, and he began to perspire. This must occur frequently. Petra yells at another outlandish Scouting Legion member, "Oro, we keep telling you, don't talk so much when we are riding." Naturally, he only moaned in pain and discomfort, so his words were mumbles. When you encounter someone like Rock Lee and his sensei made a guy, however, Naruto wasn't particularly put off by his actions. The flames of youth are far more powerful than the eccentricities of anyone else. It was not long before they arrived at one of their bases. The way they moved, however, intrigued and perplexed Naruto. Whenever a red smoke signal was thrown into the air, they would sometimes move away from it and in a different direction. You'll probably find out later, but there must be a reason for it. Naruto followed Levi and the commander of the Scouting Legion, who he discovered was named Erwin Smith, as everyone started going about their daily business upon returning to a base. When he got off his horse like the rest of them, they had gestured for him to follow them. There was no reason for him not to. He didn't really blame them. They were probably seeking the truth from him because he was a suspicious man who sounded insane to them most of the time. He would be honest with them. Information about the Kyuubi was forbidden. Erwin sat in the chair behind the desk as they entered what Naruto believed to be the commander's office, while Levi collapsed on the couch against the wall, crossing his legs and unwinding. But Erwin gestured for Naruto to take the chair in front of his desk. "Now that we are alone, why don't you explain yourself, Naruto?" Erwin said, folding his hands in a way that made Naruto think of Tsunade as Naruto sat down. Naruto closed his eyes and nodded. He needed to consider this. He might have to explain a lot because he wasn't in the same dimension. With his eyes open, he said, "You obviously know I am not from here." Erwin nodded, and he continued, "You see, I just figured it out recently and it was a shock to myself, which was why I looked panicked and I wasn't sure how to deal with it. I still don't. I think I came from another dimension." He was met with a scoff to his right. His response was raised eyebrows and silence. "Another what?" Levi asked. "Another world. I guess I know this isn't mine. I came from the elemental nations and Konoha, and everyone knows what and where Konoha is. When you guys said you didn't know it, I knew something was wrong." A doubtful Erwin questioned, "And how did you come to our world?" Although he wasn't yet ready to believe him, he could tell that the child in front of him genuinely believed everything he said, and thus far, he hasn't shown signs of being insane or mentally ill. "My home village was attacked and nearly destroyed. I was fighting the man responsible. I won and I was on my way home when I was captured by an enemy who took advantage of my exhaustion from the tough battle. He had this weird ability to teleport things and himself he was using it on me, but I tried fighting the jutsu and after I did, things went black. I guess I got knocked out, but when I woke up I was in this forest I had never seen in the elemental nations, along with those weird titan things, and then I met you guys." Naruto attempted to provide a brief account. Levi questioned, "So you don't know how you got here?" He genuinely believed that this whole situation was crazy. "Are you teleporting? Really?" "Yeah, I'm just as confused as you guys." "And what is a jutsu?" Erwin inquired, intrigued. With a sheepish grin, Naruto said, Shinobi are the soldiers of my world. We specialize in espionage and assault warfare, though we get hired to do a bunch of other stuff like escort and delivery missions." "Oh. Well, I wasn't really the best in the academy, but I'll try to explain it the best I can. A jutsu is what we shinobi," he said, in response to the blank looks he was receiving. "A soldier, then?" "I thought so," Erwin Smith's sharp military mind said. An impatient Levi questioned, "And the jutsus?" Naruto grinned excitedly, recalling all of his fierce jutsus, and remarked, "Oh, they are shinobi techniques." Erwin said courteously, "Why don't you show us one? If nothing else, so we can believe you." "Yeah, okay," he said, putting his hands into a well-known cross seal. "Kage Bunshin no Jutsu. This is one of my favorites." The other people in the room were startled out of the room when two puffs of smoke appeared on either side of Naruto. The two veterans were shocked to see two clones of the blonde suddenly appear in front of them when the smoke cleared. When Naruto said, "This is the Kage Bunshin no Jutsu, by using chakra, the combination of spiritual and physical energy produced within the body and the fuel of jutsus, I can create a solid clone that is the same as me and right down to my personality. The only difference," he smiled and took a moment to elbow the clones in the gut, causing them to dispel in a puff of smoke in the same manner that they were created. "They aren't as sturdy. They dispel with a single good hit. Though they are useful to overwhelm enemies since I can create thousands. But the original purpose was to gather information and spying purposes. Whatever the clone learns or sees, I learn. I can have a clone read a book, and once it dispels, I'll know all about it. The only consequence is the memory backlash, causing a massive migraine. If I dispel too many at once, it also uses a huge amount of chakra. Most can only make one or two. I'm just way too awesome with my huge chakra reserves." Naruto grinned broadly. Erwin continued to see the potential of such a technique and did not conceal his amazement. This would undoubtedly be beneficial to humanity and any additional abilities he possesses. He was therefore resolved to see what more he had to offer. His eagerness was barely concealed as he asked, "What else can you do with chakra?" "Well, a whole lot of cool things. I mean, the possibilities are endless. You can manipulate the elements like water, fire, earth, lightning, or wind. Walk on walls and water. Enhance your speed and strength tenfold. And some people can combine some elements to make a new one like ice or lava. I find out about new jutsus all the time. I am a wind user though. It's supposed to be the best for close to mid-range fighters like myself," he said enthusiastically. "Amazing. I know, aren't jutsus awesome? And check this one out, it's one of my main attack jutsus," he exclaimed with a childlike enthusiasm as he flipped to the ground. Another clone materialized beside Naruto as he extended his hand, palm up. Levi arched an eyebrow, wondering what this was meant to be since they had already seen the clone technique. As he was thinking that, a blue sphere of energy appeared in the clone's hand and he began to wave his hands around the open palm as Naruto proudly held it out. The clone pushed it away. "The Rasengan, don't let its swirling sphere of pure chakra beauty fool you. It really packs a punch. I could destroy this room with it." He laughed as he let it go. Of course, he didn't think that joke made the men tense. Erwin began, "You have some formidable abilities, Naruto." With a warm smile, he recalled his training with Jiraiya and said, "Thanks, I really trained hard to get where I am." Naruto, I am not gonna beat around the bush, so I will get to the point. Do you know if you can get home to your world? Erwin replied with seriousness. Naruto's cheerful disposition dimmed as he looked down. I don't know any dimensional or space-time jutsu. I don't think I will be able to go home. Eventually Erwin said, Naruto, let me tell you what is going on in our world. Long ago, humanity prospered in this world, however that changed over a century ago when we found ourselves with a new predator. We were no longer the top of the food chain. Those giants you saw, they're what we call titans. They're terrifyingly powerful creatures. They may seem stupid and blundering with not much intelligence, but they more than make up for that in strength. They range from 3 to sometimes over 15 meters. They can regenerate even decapitation in under 2 minutes, and with hordes upon hordes of these titans, humanity has been pushed to the brink of extinction. Naruto followed in his footsteps. Levi followed him. The last remnants of humanity built 3 walls. The outer wall is named Maria, the middle, Rose, the innermost is named Sina. We endured a century of peace, but 3.5 years ago, a colossal titan 60 meters tall, able to look over the 50-meter walls, breached Wall Maria. The titans hunted humanity once more. Another abnormal titan, the armored titan, which had armor-like plates on its body, destroyed the inner gate, thus opening a path to a third of humanity's last territory. We lost that third of territory along with 20% of our population after a failed attempt to retake it. They walked through the structure until they arrived outside near a few trees. Erwin pivoted and gave Levi, donning the 3D maneuver gear, a nod. Levi showed off the capabilities of the device by swinging and grappling gracefully through the trees and slicing off some branches. We don't have your jutsus. We are nearly powerless before their strength and brute force, but we do have our ingenuity and intelligence beyond basic instinct. We developed devices called 3D maneuver gear to use our smaller size to our advantage so we can better attack the one vital spot on a titan, the nape of their necks. We use swords to cut into them, ending their existence. Naruto turned to Erwin, startled, and said, I would like your help, Naruto. Humanity has been wallowing in despair, powerless to its tormentors for too long. I want to give them hope. I want to defeat the titans and show humanity the outside world. My job as the commander of the Scouting Legion is to pave the way for humanity's expansion. Life outside the walls now. My job is to simply retake our territory and Wall Maria. Humanity has been losing longer than I have been alive. Every step a titan takes is a step we as humans lose. I am tired of losing. I want to win, so I ask of you, can you help all of us win? Can you help humanity advance? Naruto couldn't speak. The state of the world was dire. Giant man-eating monsters, near extinction, breached walls, massive walls, and general mayhem. What ought he to do? He is clueless about how to get home. How can he return home to check if everyone was actually revived? He was never that intelligent. He never hesitated and always charged forward, worrying about the repercussions later. Why was he there now, particularly when someone, anywhere in the world, needs his assistance? He had never before refused a request for assistance. He knows he can help these people, and they need it. The majority of humanity was wiped out by these titans because they were helpless and nothing could match their unadulterated power. Perhaps it's time for them to meet someone with comparable strength. When Naruto looked down, Erwin was still staring at him with his hands behind his back, waiting for a response. Interested in his response, Levi leaned against the trunk on a branch. With his trademark arrogant grin and resolve, Naruto looked up and uttered, Where do I start, Commander? The following day, the Scouting Legion made its way back to Trost. While they traveled to their makeshift base inside Wall Rose, they had kept Naruto in one of the caravans. It's better if no one knows about him. We now find our hero struggling on the base's training grounds. Erwin grinned slightly as he saw Naruto tinkering with the full body harness used to operate the 3D maneuver gear. While Petra attempted to assist him in putting on the equipment, he was complaining to himself. After a few demonstrations from Levi, Erwin persuaded him of the advantages of utilizing both his skills and the maneuver gear. Initially, he was opposed to donning the device, claiming it would get in his way. Following that, Naruto visualized himself using jutsus and fighting through the woods. As he ran through a number of fierce scenarios of his awesomeness, he had to admit that the maneuver gear was pretty badass, even though he was accustomed to moving through the trees as a ninja. Naruto is currently putting on his gear in order to start his training. Erwin made the decision to train Naruto with the Legion and then leave him with the other trainees after he had gained sufficient knowledge. He still needed to follow protocol and go through the military. Your military cannot have unknowns. Naruto won't be accepted without warning and placed in a squad without further explanation. Erwin therefore made the decision to train and sponsor Naruto so that he could be admitted into the military and fight without any issues. Because Naruto is such an important asset to humanity, naturally, he would need to be a member of the Scouting Legion and conceal his skills from the military police and corrupt leaders. A witch hunt was the last thing he wanted. He eventually completed donning the harnesses. While he was back with Naruto, he continued to complain to himself while thanking Petra for her assistance. Erwin raised an eyebrow and said, "Naruto, is there something wrong?" Naruto glanced up at the commander before turning back to face himself. His old clothes were ruined in the fight with Nagato, so he was wearing new ones. Despite his protests to keep his ninja sandals, he was wearing the standard military white pants and knee-high leather boots. In order to wear his black t-shirt with the orange Konoha spiral flame on the front, he managed to get someone to patch up his shirt and keep his Hitai 8. Under that, too, was his metal mesh armor. On top of that was the full body harness he had been having trouble with just a few moments before, which had an odd skirt-like object wrapped around his butt and hips, in Naruto's opinion. He inquired as to what it was, and was informed that it was a component of the harness that helped distribute the weight and improve comfort. Finally, he is wearing one of those brown, patchless jackets that all soldiers wear. To be honest, it was still similar to size, but it wasn't black. He always shivers a little at that thought. After examining his attire, Naruto looked back up and remarked gravely, "There isn't enough orange." Petra nearby sweat drops and Erwin decides to ignore him. He has plenty of eccentric subordinates. He knows how to deal with them and their quirks. Ignore it like it isn't there. Thus, Naruto's training commenced. They used 2 wires and rigging, similar to what the trainees have, to create a makeshift set for stimulating the 3DMG to assess Naruto's potential and balance. They had him raised and set up. Naruto was unsteady at first, trembling a little, but he quickly found his center and hung steadily. Naruto attributed it to his training. He can walk on water, after all. From that point on, it turned into a crash course for Naruto to catch up to the trainees and swiftly raise his level of 3DMG proficiency to that of a new soldier. Naruto had 30 go with a woman named Hanji and Petra for the classroom and tactical portion of the training. After reminding Erwin of the advantages of his shadow clones, Erwin and Levi accompanied Naruto and 30 other people for the 3DMG application and the training's physical component. Naruto had to do it all over again. After that, Naruto had more than caught up to the present trainees. After 3 months, he was prepared to put his skills and knowledge to use and combine them with his ninja abilities at the level of a 3DMG graduate. Actually, a test run. Thus, as the Scouting Legion set out on their 51st expedition, Erwin once again surreptitiously concealed Naruto in a caravan. Naruto climbed out of the Trost gates and onto a nearby spare horse. Once they were out of sight of the sentries with the green cloak of the Scouting Legion flapping behind him, he rode forward with a 3DMG until he reached Erwin's side. He gave his commander a single nod, and he returned the gesture. Officially, the 51st expedition had begun and Naruto was quite thrilled. It reminded me of the C-rank mission to Wave. He had never been on a mission, or expedition as they called them. However, given his luck, the outcome will be precisely the same. However, he was unable to think that way because he was stronger than when he was younger and had access to technology that improved his fighting skills. He will defend his new allies, so this won't become a clusterfuck. For Naruto, a 30% casualty rate on each expedition was intolerable. Even though it might be acceptable to superiors and those who have never seen a Titan, he set out to significantly reduce that statistic. As soon as he heard it, he would not accept 30% and ignore it. 30% of them are still individuals, not just figures. Naruto will ensure that as many of them as possible return to the gates because they have names and families, and that's a goddamn lifetime guarantee. Following the fall of Wall Maria, the Scouting Legion set up multiple supply lines to the breached wall in order to seal it. They're unsure of how they will seal it when the time comes. They'll deal with it. Naruto reasoned that most of them didn't think they could take back the wall, which is why they were so loose with the planning. Retaking the wall and its contents is expected to take at least 10 years, according to the most optimistic estimates. As they ride on, Naruto is struck by how gloomy the majority of people in this world are. Before they die, most people fight only to exact some kind of retribution. All they want is to murder as many Titans as possible before they die. Either that or hope that, unlike some members of the garrison and military police, they never have to confront them. The others believe they should either pretend the Titans don't exist or simply remain inside the walls and hope they leave them alone. Naruto was truly shocked by their lack of faith or hope for the future. They either played ignorant of the problems or accepted their alleged fate and wanted to do as much harm as possible before leaving. Perhaps he shouldn't hold them responsible because he hasn't experienced what they have, but he can't help but feel let down by those individuals. Take action if you are dissatisfied with your circumstances. Some people, primarily in the Scouting Legion, have persisted, though Erwin and the others are members of the minority. But sometimes all you need is a shove to get things going and inspiration, a representation of hope that serves as humanity's sword and shield. Erwin wants the Legion to be that way, and Naruto will help him achieve it. Erwin calls out to Naruto, startling him out of his reverie. Over the roar of their charging horses, he shouted, "Naruto! Our first supply point is in the small town ahead, out loud. There may be titans in the town, so be on alert. We move in hard and fast, move out. After giving a single nod, Naruto leapt from his horse. Now that they were near, it was time for him to charge in the shinobi manner, but he was riding to preserve his strength for the battle with his arms flowing behind him. He ran ahead of the formation and toward the buildings in the vicinity. He used the 3DMG to propel himself forward. Once he was within range after landing on the roof with grace, he continued to run forward, leaping from rooftop to rooftop occasionally. He used the equipment to preserve his strength once more. He recalled his role in the plan as he moved toward his goal. The tallest structure in the town center was to be his. They needed him to take the town's vantage point because he was one of their new heavy hitters and secret weapon. It was his test as well in this circumstance. How well could he perform? Could he change? Erwin wanted to know these things during their training. He had already seen hints of Naruto's full range of skills. He had not yet witnessed them in action. Hanji, the squad leader, was eager to see what chakra could do to titans. An 11-meter class charged through a nearby building, causing it to tremble before collapsing, and Naruto stumbled out of his reverie. Its untidy black hair was covered in dust and debris from the building. It collided with it, appeared to be taking a dump on its face, though uncomfortable. I'm content, it's a strange combination, but that's what Naruto thought of first, but then he noticed that the corner of its mouth was dripping blood. Grabbing his grips and attaching them to the blades at his hips while crossing his arms, Naruto grimaced. Using chakra to increase his speed, he sprinted forward, appearing to most people to be a blur before rushing to the titan's neck. The greenish blur appeared to bounce from the building to the street below to the building next to it. By the time the titan had completely risen from the debris, Naruto was landing on the rooftop behind it, his blades hissing and steaming from the titan's hot blood. As the titan collapsed forward with a death shudder, flopping to the ground lifelessly as the ground trembled slightly, Naruto continued forward with resolve without even looking back. Despite their somewhat human appearance, these creatures were monsters. Already, he could hear faint screams to his left, and behind him there were lives at stake, and not everyone had the luxury of chakra at their disposal, so he couldn't hold back or hesitate. Erwin cautioned him against using his shadow clones to seize the town on his own. Despite his strong desire to do so, he claimed that since titans are drawn to big crowds, that would only draw more of them. They also didn't want to deal with their hordes. Gritting his teeth, he ran to the town's tallest structure, a bell tower in the middle of the town. He sliced through the center, heading directly for his flank, while everyone else did their part to protect it. After using his chakra to run all the way to the top, he prepared a smoke flare. By reaching into his tiny pouch, he fired skyward and popped in the round. Erwin noticed the green smoke in the middle of the formation, not far behind Naruto, and grinned a little. It had been successful thus far, so it was time for the next stage. Everyone gathers at the tower, from which they will spread out like an expanding circle throughout the town. Many 5-person squads were making their way to the town's edge. To prevent one side from overgrowing the other, the strongest squads and members were positioned at the cardinal points of the formation. Mike Zacharias would go west, Hanji would go east, and a squad leader named Ness would go south. But Corporal Levi chose the north because it was the most dangerous area of town and probably had the most titans. In the meantime, Naruto and Erwin were traveling to the northeast as part of a squad. As the squads below got ready to leave, Erwin stood atop a building with a commanding view. Since this town was one of many that would serve as supply points and stepping stones for the army that would retake Wall Maria and the territory lost within it, nobody was really talking because they knew what they had to do and they were committed to making this happen. Erwin gave each of them a nod. They all knew the score when they joined this branch of the military, so no words were necessary. They would sacrifice themselves for the benefit of humanity. They may appear insane, suicidal, and willing to die to those who were comfortable inside the walls, but they were just people who wanted change, and not just for humanity, but also for themselves and their families. A world without the fear of being a peg below the top of the food chain and the tyranny of titans. However, a little speech and a boost to morale never hurt a soldier, even if words were not required. Humanity has been stumbling and falling backwards for over a century. Right now, this is the first step of many steps forward, and these steps will turn into fierce stampedes soon enough. When we lead the army into the Shiganshina district to seal the holes, we of the Scouting Legion truly salute our hearts. We pave the way with our blood, sweat, and tears. We will take this town from the titans. Show me what I know you can do. He screamed at the end as everyone below screamed with renewed trust. He swept his arm to the side and said again, "Move to your positions. I will give the signal to begin clearing the town. Eliminate them all swiftly. Show them why they shouldn't mess with humanity." Naruto couldn't help but feel as he took his place something. He felt more driven, more assured, and more certain that he would prevail. It dawned on him then how capable Erwin was as a leader. People are truly affected in that way by his charisma. Humanity is in good hands when someone like him is in charge. Erwin and the Northeastern squad stood beside Naruto, who nodded to him. Erwin gave a nod in return and spun around, prepared to go, taking out his smoke flare gun. He shot one green round into the air. "Advance!" he roared again, leading the squad and launching himself to the edge of town with the 3D MG. Naruto smiled resolutely and trailed behind him. He was using chakra to keep up with his 3D maneuver gear and move forward again, a combination of gas and chakra conservation. They were not halfway to the town's edge when some titans confronted them. "Commander, we have two titans ahead, a 10-meter class and a 12-meter class," shouted one of the team members to Erwin. Naruto turned to his left when he heard rumbling. The lone titan approaching them made him perspire a little. But now it was climbing over the building like a fence, and it had its sights set on them. "Commander Erwin, we got a 15-meter coming toward us from the right. It looks like a deviant," he cried out. Naruto made a choice after glancing between the metaphorical rock and the difficult situation they were in. Naruto turned to face the deviant and said, "Commander, I'll take the deviant. You and the squad take the other two. I'll leave 2 clones with you." He then made the cross-shaped hand sign, and 4 shadow clones appeared in a cloud of smoke. The original and the final 2 sprinted and swung themselves over to the deviant before Erwin could object to Naruto going alone. Erwin yelled at him, "Don't be reckless, Naruto. Deviants are unpredictable," with an unusual expression of emotion on his face. However, the closest clone responded, grinning, "So is the boss, Commander." The second clone was more serious. "You know why he has to face it alone. Distract the largest threat and then eliminate the smaller threats so you can then focus on the bigger threat without distraction. Plus we need to do this quick and clear the town. We can't stop, so let's take these bastards down and go help the boss." The arrogant impersonator grinned and said, "That's if the boss still needs it." He let out a barely audible sigh and exclaimed, "Let's go," before returning to his stoic expression. Osu, a deviant, who appeared to be staring Naruto in the eyes the entire time, was climbing the building as Naruto and his 2 clones approached, but he nodded as he turned to face his clones. They gave a nod in return and ran ahead. One ran normally, and the other had chakra. Conversely, Naruto employed his 3D MG. When he sensed the memory of one of his clones, he swung and struggled through the streets and buildings, gaining speed. While the chakra-enhanced one was fighting guerrilla style, attacking and retreating, the one operating normally served as a distraction. In general, it is annoying to cut at something and then retreat before being discovered. The deviant abruptly left while the slower one was chasing after it when it used its arms and legs to move surprisingly quickly toward the building the clone was currently on. It was sprawled across a building rooftop like a baby would crawl over an object. The clone died in a puff of smoke after being crushed because it was too shocked by the maneuver to move. This time, Naruto and his final clone decided to take action. The quick clone sprinted ahead, grappling himself forward with the 3D MG. After the collision, the deviant was still stunned and perplexed, and he might have been wondering why there was no blood. The clone sliced its Achilles tendons as it attempted to climb the building to potentially jump at someone again, causing it to stumble and fall face first to the street below after launching himself above the titan. The original Naruto was in the air beside him. Another clone was waving its hands around a ball of blue chakra that he was holding out. The ball of swirling chakra got bigger and bigger as he started to descend to the nape of the neck. Udama Rasengan. Naruto struck the titan's vital area with the enormous ball of grinding chakra. With a final yell, Naruto let the ball explode outward, creating a small crater around the impact area. He continued pushing and grinding it further, and blood began to splatter freely. As Naruto saw the deviant corpse start to deteriorate in the typical titan fashion, he leapt off the back, dismissing his clones. He dashed to see how his commander was doing for being careless and disobeying orders. He would most likely get chewed out. He was never a disciplined soldier, so it's not the first time that's happened. The village chiefs and the generals were referred to as "old man" and "granny" by him. While the rest of the team returned after presumably finishing the 10-meter class, he arrived just in time to witness the 12-meter class fall from a combination between Erwin and his clones. As his clones' memories began to fade, Naruto landed on a rooftop close to Erwin. He let out a sigh and pondered why his clones always had distinct personalities. Erwin gave him a nod, but he was frowning. He looked at Naruto and said, "Naruto, next time don't go running off without orders. I know you are stronger than most, but everyone can't go off and do whatever they feel like doing in a battle. There has to be order and control in order to win, understand?" "I'm sorry sir, I was just thinking on my toes. It seemed like a good plan." Naruto trailed off after straightening up. Despite all of his positive qualities and fighting prowess, he has a dangerous hero complex and is reckless in fights, charging head-on, thinking spontaneously. Irwin sighed. He must be accustomed to working in small groups where his viewpoint is highly valued. He believed that we would follow his plan and understand what he was thinking later. We'll work on that. We will talk later. For now though, we finish our objective. We are behind as it is. I can see green smoke from certain points in the town, meaning some squads have reached their point of the edge of town. Let's move. He was met with a chorus of, "Yes, Commander," as they moved forward once more. Without any more Titans issues, they reached the outskirts of town. Irwin fired a green smoke round up and nodded to one of the squad members. According to Irwin's count of smoke rounds and squads, they fired the round second to last. Shortly after their round, a green smoke round came from Levi's direction. Good, that is everyone now. We will set up a building as the main supply point with the non-perishable rations and equipment. Fire the yellow round to let the supply team know to start unloading it into the most stable building they can find. Mike should be back there to help direct them. I will head back to direct them as well. Naruto, use your clones to scout and patrol the outskirts. The rest of you follow the plan and patrol your assigned part of the town. Dismissed. He concluded by ordering everyone to leave for their duties. With a grimace, Naruto watched everyone go. He wasn't anticipating the likely reprimand he would receive later. However, he made the well-known hand gesture and shook his head. 50 Bunshin appeared before him in a great puff of smoke. "You know what to do. Scatter," he exclaimed, moving his arm to scatter them. In the meantime, Naruto sat on the building with a view of the plane and focused. He entered Sage mode and summoned the planet's plentiful natural energy. He could feel his allies' many signatures. It appeared that there had only been a small number of casualties thus far. That was excellent. Although he would have preferred 0, it's still better than it could have been. Naruto felt as though he was losing something while he was in Sage mode, meditating, which is odd because he always feels at ease when he is in this state. Naruto recalls being told, "Ga, I'm an idiot," by the elderly Toad Sage Fukasaku. How could he have forgotten such a thing? They ought to be aware of what to do. They are hundreds of years old, and elderly people are very knowledgeable. How could he have forgotten to call forth the toads? I take it that summoning jutsu is a space-time technique. Man, he just proved that everyone back home was correct to call him Adobe. At home over the last 3 or so months, he hasn't even given it much thought. Actually, that is a little frightening. After shaking off those thoughts, he returned to the task at hand, biting his thumb to extract blood, going over some hand signals, and shouting, "Kachiyose no Jutsu." A medium-sized puff of smoke appeared, followed by some coughing and a deep, teen-like voice. That voice sounded familiar. What the hell? Where am I? Who summoned me? Gamakichi. Naruto, why do you always summon us to weird places? You wait, Naruto? Gamakichi verified the resident and recently appointed Toad Sage's voice after the smoke cleared. He screamed angrily, "Where the hell have you been, jackass? Everyone thought you were captured." Since his signature on the contract was still there and not black, the Toads knew he was still alive, to the relief of Kakashi and everyone else in Konoha. They thus informed everyone of that, but when Tsunade woke up, she still gave him a good tongue lash. "Well, that masked guy tried to teleport me somewhere after my fight with Nagato. I tried fighting it and flared mine and Kyuubi's chakra to get my body to move. Kyuubi thinks that is what botched it and caused me to be sent to this place. We think it's another world," he replied. "Wow, that is a pretty damn good reason. No wonder the reverse summoning wasn't working. We could feel the pull. Like the one you get when you attach a rope to a tree, but you can't really move it since it's too heavy. We need a lot of chakra to reverse summon you." "How well, that explains why you got summoned. I was aiming for the old Toad Sage Fukasaku. I must need a lot of chakra to summon him, and I am in Sage mode." "Well, we are pretty far from Mount Myoboku, so what have you been doing?" Naruto then told Gamakichi everything that had happened since his arrival. He was obviously taken aback when it came to the human race. This world was in terrible shape. They both laughed at that, and he went on, "Well, back home things aren't that bad. A little tense right now though. Akatsuki seems to have gone dark for the moment since you disappeared. They must think you were dead. If how you say you got here is anything to go by, there is also one Jinchuriki left. The Hachibi container. He was almost captured and the Raikage almost went on a rampage. Though they found out he was just on a self-imposed vacation. Yes, tell her that worrying about me will only make her wrinkles worse. For that, she would punch you through the Hokage monument." "Hey. Well, I'll send a letter through a messenger Toad to describe everything later. I'm kind of in the middle of a mission right now. Me summoning you was a spur-of-the-moment thing really." He grumbled sheepishly. "Are those Titan-related items really present here? I'd like to see these hideous things." Gamakichi cried out in a sudden elation at the new finding. "This is serious, Kichi. These items may be hazardous." With a deadpan expression, the Toad boss's son remarked, coming from the guy who beat Pain. "You understand what I mean." In addition, No one has ever seen talking animals here. They'll lose it and try to murder you. Asshole, TCHE pouted. I bet you just want to ruin my fun. Shut it and go home, you overgrown wart. See you, idiot. He said this before scuttling off to the toad's house. No regard for the summoner. TCH what? Naruto suddenly started to feel a lot of signatures coming from the north. None of them were from the expedition. There had to be a total of 23. Some were running, while others were moving at a leisurely pace. He mentally panicked. Damn it, this isn't good, not good at all. And created 2 clones, one to tell Erwin and the other to simply dispel the information to his patrolling clones. Shit, shit, shit. Why are so many coming at once? They were all in a group and only came from the north. No one else was coming from any other direction. The plain to the north was 100 meters away, and that was the direction the Titans were coming from. He was in the town park or something, and he was met by 30 of his clones when he arrived at the north side of town. He assumed they were taking positions somewhere else. He could work with this. All right, folks, we need to keep these guys at bay. You understand that we can't allow them to take the town? Today, no more casualties? Osu. In order to ensure that no one escaped their radar and caused chaos, they saluted as they ran forward and positioned themselves in different locations for the perfect ambush. Others continued to advance and moved to hear them toward the middle of the clone gauntlet. He saw multiple black smoke flares pointing north out of the corner of his eye, so it's good they understood his message despite his chakra. It's not a good idea to take on 23 Titans and potential deviants. As the first few running Titans came into view, he had a thought. Yes, similar to the wave mission. Erwin noticed that the person he was speaking to was tense when he was giving instructions to the supply team. He turned around to see Naruto. You never know if it's him with that clone ability, and saw the serious yet slightly terrified expression on his face. What is the matter, Naruto? 23 Titans are traveling from the north to the town. According to the boss, we could certainly use the backup, but he and the majority of the clones are establishing a defensive line and perimeter at the town park, it said anxiously. Oh no, 23? Get me a flare gun, and let's mobilize the troops. They're being held back by Naruto. Mike and Levi, who were inside the building when the conversation took place, went outside to assemble their squads and move to support the new, strangely gifted child. Once outside, Erwin used his maneuver gear to launch himself to the rooftop and fire a black round to the north before leading his squad along with Levi and Mike's ready-made reinforcements. Everyone grimaced as the air to the north was filled with ominous rumblings and explosions. It was the Titans. They also had a comrade to support them. Fuck. The Titans were all in one group running around trying to grab the scampering clones like one would a bug, but it wasn't looking good. Naruto had to roll out of the way of a pudgy appendage that tried to grab him and ran up the arm of the obese Titan. He slashed the unfocused eyes, causing it to thrash in pain. He then used chakra to run around the body to the neck and sliced it open, ending its life. Naruto looked up from his spot on the corpse and grimaced. Now that half of his clones were gone, he couldn't spam them because he needed to save his chakra. Most of them went out because they were diverted and funneled into the prepared gauntlet, and that's where things went wrong. 4 of the 23 Titans were deviants, and they would run in circles or ignore the distractions before scurrying into the gauntlet and preventing him and the clones from eliminating the smaller and less dangerous Titans. They had already eliminated 7 of them, but none of them were deviants, and they still had a long way to go. You two come here, TCH. He gestured to 2 clones who were about to enter the group and commit suicide. Let's do it. I have enough natural energy left in me right now. The original held it above his head as it grew to a large size and span faster, causing the wind to pick up and swirl around him. They all nodded resolutely as they started to focus on a swirl of energy that was growing larger in their hands. It became lighter blue, more to the shade of white, as 4 protrusions of wind, similar to a shuriken, began to spin at high speeds, causing a loud high-pitched whine. Naruto thought it was sufficient, so he reared back and threw the wind chakra shuriken of destruction at the horde. His clones attempted to funnel and group the remaining Titans together so they could do as much damage as possible with this next move, which cost them 10 more clones. Fuden. Rasenshuriken. However, the pattern continued as it passed through other body parts like legs and torsos before the blades suddenly expanded, further bifurcating more of the group. The sphere of destruction then erupted into a dome of microscopic wind blades, destroying those fully caught in the blast. A 7-meter class turned to see what the annoying noise was, diverting its attention from the disappearing blondes. As it did so, the chakra shuriken immediately decapitated it and disintegrated the nape of its neck as it cut through it like butter. The 5 clones from the beginning stood guard in front of Naruto, who was panting and hunched over with his hands on his knees for support as the winds died down. The Rasen Shuriken eliminated 7 of the remaining Titans, including 1 of the deviants, and 3 of them were injured. including one armless deviant, who was slowly growing back his missing limbs and body parts idly. Naruto noticed that they were healing more slowly than usual, so 6 were still okay yet 2 of them were deviants, while 3 were headed back to their man-eating ways. One clone succinctly described Naruto's state of exhaustion and the fact that he only has 5 clones to support him. Well, whatever this is awful, he was startled when a shadow passed over him, but he soon calmed down and sighed with relief upon seeing the well-known green cloaks bearing the wings of freedom on the back. "Hey brat, nice job," said a cocky-sounding voice before launching into action, "but relax, I'll take care of the rest. Stop pretending to be Corporal Levi, Oro," Petra Ral's well-known feminine voice. "Stop reprimanding me as if you were my wife." "Stop talking," Corporal Levi's irritated voice said. "We have more important things to worry about." As he sat down suddenly on the street in exhaustion, Naruto told his clones to assist them and provide them with information on the deviants' behaviors. He felt a hand pat his shoulder and looked up to see his commander grinning as more titans fell to the reinforcements. "Good work, Naruto. This town could have fallen and we would have taken heavy casualties if it wasn't for you," he said with pride. "No problem," Naruto said with a weary smile and a strained voice. "I mean, that's why I'm here. I'm content if my actions result in more people surviving and being able to fight another day." Erwin gave him a startled look before grinning again and saying, "Naruto, the world needs more people with your mindset. It would undoubtedly be a better place if we did." He gestured for 2 soldiers to assist Naruto in retreating to the supply point so he could recuperate, but for the time being, get some rest. Naruto grinned as he received support from 2 of his allies. After all, he did well, didn't he? He protected people, which was something he had always desiderated to be a hero, and when he landed at the supply point with the 2 men's assistance and was greeted with smiles and pats on the back, he undoubtedly felt like one. His new allies respected him and acknowledged him. As he lay on a cot in the supply point's main building and closed his eyes for a brief rest, he simply laughed a little. When the Scouting Legion returned to Trost 2 weeks later, the locals and soldiers noticed something odd. Trost soldiers are typically stoic or gloomy after returning from an expedition, which usually indicates that they didn't accomplish much or that many casualties occurred. However, when they returned and started talking to themselves, some of them grinning, it created quite a stir. As soon as word got out, everyone left their homes and places of employment to witness the Legion's return. A joyful Scouting Legion returning. That was something that people had to see. Some garrison soldiers even left their posts to perhaps overhear a conversation to determine why they appeared so cheerful. Naturally, they didn't get much that way. Most of them were talking about everyday topics, such as how much they wanted to go to the bathroom or sleep in a real bed, or how they wanted to go get drunk later and pick up some girls, or how they simply wanted to see their friends and family, all of which were said with a smile or in jest, and it truly stunned the public. They killed thousands of titans and they lost not a single soldier. They retook Wall Maria. They found secrets of the titans and used them against them. And the most outrageous of all was that they found a superhuman and persuaded him to fight with them. Levi saw them and simply called them idiots, and Erwin and the rest of the Legion were just their normal selves. Ultimately, the people who came to greet them received no response, but that didn't stop the rumors from spreading. They set up 2 major supply points and several smaller ones in between, which is the real reason they were happy, of course. They also had only 10% casualties this time, with 7% of those being wounded, which was a significant change from the usual 30% or higher casualty rate. The caravan was not the most comfortable thing to ride in, so Naruto got out and stretched and tried to get the kinks out of his joints. When they returned to the headquarters, he moved around trying to keep himself busy by helping unload supplies and equipment, just making himself useful, until he was called to his commander's office later in the afternoon. As he entered, he noticed Erwin working on some paperwork, which made him chuckle to himself because he thought of all the paperwork Tsunade had to do all the time. Mike was standing by the window behind him, and he gestured for Naruto to sit down when he saw him. "What is this about, Commander?" he asked. After setting down his pen, he folded his hands in front of him and said, "Well, Naruto, it's time for you to be formally enrolled in the military." At that, Naruto became alert, saying, "Really? When can I expect to receive a new jacket with a patch?" With excitement, he asked. With a small laugh, Erwin and Mike responded, "Remember, Naruto, that in order to avoid suspicion, you must be promoted alongside the other trainees." I forgot, I expected you to, but don't worry, you'll only need to stay for a year and a few months." Mike laughed even harder when he heard Naruto moan. "Look on the bright side," Naruto said, glancing up at the smirking human bloodhound Mike. "You will be surrounded by people your age, think of it as a camp." Smiling, Erwin concluded, "A military boot camp. Are you sure I can't just—" He moaned again. "Naruto, we talked about this. Stupid rookies will drag me down," he pouted after sighing and saying, "Fine. you scumbags will miss me." He saluted his temporary and future commander with a friendly smile. As Naruto went to get his belongings, they both returned the salute. Erwin returned to work after he left, and Mike remarked, "We will definitely miss him. Many people returned today because of him." "I know," Erwin said with a sigh, "but we will achieve so much more if we want things to go smoothly, and we don't have to hide him all the time in any case. It's only been a year and no time. He'll be back here annoying us." Naruto was standing in front of Keith Shadis, a bald man with a wheatish complexion, wrinkles on his forehead, and dark circles around his eyes and lack of eyebrows that reminded Naruto of Gaara. Keith also had a beard on his chin. "So you are here to enter with the current trainees?" "Yup. And you have been sponsored by the Scouting Legion." Levi responded, "Yeah, the brat is," with annoyance and boredom. There was a mumble. "TCH, Dick. What was that?" Darkly, he inquired. "Nothing. If the Scouting Legion believes you are capable, I don't see why you can't report to this cabin and pick up your trainee jacket here. Additionally, they will provide you with a schedule for our activities here. Ask your fellow trainees any questions you may have. Got it?" "Yes, sir." Naruto gave a salute. "Good, dismissed. See y'all around." Levi. "You too, brat." Naruto left the room grumbling, leaving the two men alone. Shadis turned to Levi and said, "I know he is probably stronger than he will let on since you guys are doing something that hasn't been done since you came here with Erwin, but I want to know what is his strength." Levi just said, "Strong enough to get our attention without training." After raising an eyebrow, he departed, leaving Shadis to ponder. Naruto went to his new cabin after getting his jacket and schedule, knocked on the door 3 times, and waited until a teenager about a year younger than him opened it. The teenager's eyes were green. His messy brown hair was neither too long nor too short, and they were about the same height. The teenager raised an eyebrow at the newcomer, but said, "Yeah, can I help you?" "Yes, I'm new, and this cabin was given to me by the way. My name is Naruto Uzumaki. Nice to meet you." "Oh, nice to meet you. I'm Eren Yeager. You can put your stuff on that extra bunk. I was just gonna head to the main cabin for some dinner with the rest of the trainees. I can introduce you to everyone." "Oh, that'd be cool. Come on. It's something cooked instead of rations," Naruto said cheerfully, tossing the pack of things and belongings at the bunk and removing his trainee jacket before following Eren to dinner. When they arrived at the main cabin, Naruto could already smell the food, making his mouth water. "Here we are. Well, let's go. I can introduce you to some of my friends as well and sit with us." The smell was so strong that Naruto simply nodded, barely paying attention at this point. Before shutting the door after letting Naruto inside, Eren called out to everyone, saying, "Hey guys." When they saw Naruto standing beside him, the crowd began to quiet down. "This here is Naruto. He is new and is gonna be a part of our trainee squad," they whispered. "Hey, it's good to meet you all." Naruto gave them all his classic grin and a 2-fingered salute. Naruto continued to smile despite the blank looks he received. Worriedly, he thought, "What the hell? Someone say something," and began to perspire. With an uneasy laugh, Eren replied, "Yeah, come on, Naruto, I'll let you sit with me." No one reacted to his presence, which was insulting. He even got Levi to smirk before he could hide it from the time he played a practical joke on Orochi. He won't look at horses the same way again. Naruto dropped his smile and followed him with a depressed mood, and Cloud following him comically. "It's a trap. Don't let the thoughts wander." Naruto choked a little on the bile rising to his throat as he sat at a table with 2 other people, one of whom was a boy Eren's age with blue eyes and blonde hair that framed his face. Naruto thought the boy looked a little feminine for a guy, kind of like Haku. With her short chin-length black hair, apathetic dark bluish-gray eyes, and a red scarf around her neck, the other occupant was unmistakably female, and Naruto noticed that she resembled his people from the elemental nations. Conversations that had been cut off were quietly resumed when Naruto and Eren sat down, though Naruto received a few curious glances. In an effort to diffuse the awkward situation, Eren decided to make more introductions. He coughed a little and said, "So Naruto, this here is Armin Arlert," pointing to the blonde boy, who acknowledged him with a shy wave and a, "Nice to meet you." Naruto nodded back. "And this is Mikasa Ackerman." This was the only girl at the table, of course, but she just coolly looked at him out of the corner of her eye as she took a bite out of her bread and nodded slightly with a quiet, "Hello." While taking a bite, Naruto glanced at Mikasa and almost choked, thinking, she must have some Uchiha in her. At least she doesn't seem like some Avenger. Or like she took too many antidepressants like Itachi and talking in monotone. Naruto simply smiled uncomfortably. What was with these personalities? How are they friends when they should clash or overwhelm each other? One is an effeminate timid little boy, and the other is a stoic girl who appears uninterested in anything. Naturally, the table was awkwardly silent at the moment, so Naruto continued to analyze. Eren seems normal, well, normalish. He is volunteering to fight giant man-eating monsters. He corrected himself while perspiring a little. At least he seems normal at first glance. I'll find out his quirk or abnormality soon enough. Every soldier ends up getting one. Naturally, he was thinking about his time with the Scouting Legion, and Konoha as well. Everyone needs something to cope. Eren tried to strike up a conversation with the blonde because he could no longer bear the awkward silence that was ruining his dinner and mood. So Naruto, he said after capturing his interest, how did you get into this trainee squad? Given how quiet the mess hall was, he naturally attracted the attention of the majority of those within earshot. After all, it had been nearly 2 years since we began the camp. Erwin, who had actually been prepared for these questions, told Naruto what he should say, which was mainly half-truths. Naruto had been ready for these questions. Well, I was sponsored by the Scouting Legion. The surrounding eavesdroppers reacted with wide eyes, and the boy who was asked dropped his jaw. You were sponsored by the Scouting Legion? Eren practically shouted. Naruto wiped his ear and winced before responding, yeah, that's what I said. What makes them want to sponsor you? The timid Armin asked that question, and Naruto saw that his eyes had the same sparkle that Shikamaru's had whenever he was truly in the right frame of mind to consider a problem. Well, over a couple months ago I was found by the Legion on one of their expeditions, Naruto said, leaning back and beginning to tell the half-truth that Erwin had instructed him to say. Those who had not previously had wide eyes now did. What? Was the standard response in the mess hall. Indeed, many villages did not receive the same warning as others when the wall was breached. Many villages were unable to reach mine. Actually, very few people were aware that we even existed. We were overpowered. He waited for that to sink in. Those in the room who had witnessed a Titan attack either hardened their eyes or winced in sympathy, while the others were simply anxious or inquisitive about what an actual Titan was like. I remained the sole survivor. I fled and went into hiding while attempting to return to Wall Rose. I managed to survive on my own. However, I was essentially traveling blind because I had never been there. Good thing I'm good at climbing trees, he said, pausing for a grim laugh before continuing. I kept trying to find my way over there, but it's hard to make any progress moving with the occasional Titan wandering around. You spent more than 3 years away from Wall Rose. Being from the district where the initial breach and Titan invasion started, Eren asked softly in shock, believing he had seen and experienced more than most people here, but this man in front of him. As he recalled his arrival, Naruto said absently, yeah, I mostly stayed in the forest of giant trees. That is probably the safest and most dangerous place. There are many high spots to avoid the Titans, but many Titans pass through them. All right. You've seen a lot of Titans, then? A short child with a buzz cut who was seated at a nearby table asked with nervous but inquisitive enthusiasm. Yeah, I've killed some too, Naruto said absently, recalling the smiling faces covered in blood. Everyone in the mess hall turned to the conversation after that, and Naruto finally realized that everyone was staring at him. They had never killed a Titan before, and some had never even seen one. Based on what they had been taught, the Titans appeared to be nearly unbeatable, so hearing that someone their age was killing one must be intriguing and motivating. You've murdered Titans? How? You were alone. How would you combat them? Eren asked in a desperate manner, wanting to kill them all more than anyone else in the camp because he was weak and wanted to be strong. He had to watch his mother be devoured because he wasn't strong enough. However, hearing someone who was only marginally older than him claim to have killed Titans is enough to make one angry at oneself. Questions like, what does he have that I don't? He wanted to know. He needs to know how he was able to kill Titans before he was even trained. Naruto laughed a little and went on, in my village there were a lot of laid-back garrison troops. One of them taught me the basics of the 3DMG. After I annoyed him half to death to teach me, I was able to grasp it rather quickly. You were instructed, then you survived by using one of the soldiers' 3DMG, correct? Naruto turned to face the stoic girl with raven hair, who nodded after drawing her conclusions. However, I only used it occasionally. I had to conserve my supplies because it wasn't really my size in the forest of giant trees. I was fortunate to discover an abandoned military base that had supplies every time I ran out of gas or blades. I went there to refill them. During those 3 years, I most likely killed fewer than 10 people. All of those fell below the 10-meter class. One would always stay away from them and never attempted to fight them. I only fought when there was no other option. Survival was my top priority. Naruto then quietly realized how easily he was falling into this lie, and he was truly shocked by how simple it was. He had never really lied to anyone before, and if he had, he was too nervous to make it seem plausible, but this felt like he was merely telling a story. Is this how most people feel when they lie? Which one was the largest you have ever witnessed? A tall girl who appeared to be a year older than Naruto, with darker skin, hair, and eyes with freckles all over her face, stood next to the shy short blonde girl with blue eyes who asked that question. A 16-meter deviant, Naruto remarked absently, grinning wryly. Yeah, I didn't get much rest that day, he said. Pausing when he heard some gasps, he laughed mockingly as he concluded, I was too damn nervous. It was attempting to devour you. How sweet of her. That girl sounded like she was truly afraid for him. He replied, nope. In response to the raised eyebrows, he clarified that it was simply lying on the ground at the base of the tree he was standing on, simply gazing at me. This one was just relaxing and staring at me, while the smaller ones were scratching at the tree to get me. That alone is frightening. During the 2-week expedition, Naruto actually encountered the group with the deviant and the smaller titans while traveling through the forest of giant trees on his way back to Trost with a squad that included Levi and his squad to see if he could learn how he got to this world. The expedition was waiting at a nearby supply point while they went through, and it was, to put it mildly, unsettling. In a brash and arrogant tone, a teenager with disheveled light brown hair that was cut short on the sides and back asked mockingly, oh, why is that so frightening? This guy reminded me of Kiba. He's so brash and annoying when they feel like they're going to be outshined or when they don't like someone, Naruto said, his eye twitching slightly. Once in response he turned to the teenager and smiled strangely. Have you ever seen a titan? When he remained silent, he smiled and went on, they aren't pleasant, but even then they are simple and rely on instinct. Deviants are frightening because you never know what they might do. The 16-meter titan was watching my every move while it lay on the ground like it was sunbathing, resting an arm behind its head as I stood on the branch and looked down at it. With their foolish smiles on their blood-stained faces, the smaller ones clawed at the tree, waiting for me to make a mistake. Simply staring at me as if I were a snack, something to temporarily fill it. That's why it's so frightening when a deviant does nothing but stare at you. In the end, he was unable to control himself. Obviously, they haven't gone through what he has, but it was still very annoying to hear someone dismiss his words so quickly in order to boost his ego. After giving the blonde a withering glare, the brazen adolescent Jean quickly clammed up. After the story and outburst, there was an awkward silence. Eren winced as he broke the quiet, drawing attention to himself. So how were you discovered by the Scouting Legion? Lamely, he asked. At that, Naruto's expression brightened and he said, all right, at the edge of the forest. I was lying on a branch and gazing out over the plain. At that moment, I noticed the massive cloud of dust starting to form in the distance. I initially believed it to be a group of titans lumbering and running around, but I soon realized how different it was. It appeared well organized. I went to investigate after noticing that there were no titans in the area. In the end, we crossed paths midway. Everyone seemed to calm down after he finished, including Naruto. At this point, it would be simpler to tell half-truths. After they discovered you, what happened? Again, the short buzz-cut kid asked. Well, they took me to the closest base so they could speak with me and gather some information. Seeing someone outside the walls who isn't a member of the Scouting Legion startled them. I shared my story with them and accompanied them on their journey until the conclusion of their expedition. Along the way, when they weren't fighting and establishing supply points, I trained with them. They brought me inside the walls I had been searching for more than 3 years when we returned after about 3 months. But when I expressed my desire to remain with them, they told me that before I could select which division to serve with, I had to go through the standard military procedures and be assigned to the trainee squad. They sponsored me so I could advance as far as possible in the program because I didn't want to wait 3 years to fight and assist them, and here I am. With a resolute smile, Naruto concluded his tale. 1 more year and I'm back with the Scouting Legion. The brazen teenager from earlier muttered, great, another one. I'd like to go with them too. Eren answered, his fierce features displaying a great deal of determination. You do? Asked Naruto, raising an eyebrow. Few people actually do. Many people believe they're suicidal. What makes you want to go with them? Eren was silent for a moment, his eyes shadowed slightly. Armin looked uneasy as he looked from Eren to Naruto, and Mikasa simply stared at Eren with barely perceptible concern. Eren's eyes, which were filled with unbridled fury, surprised Naruto a little when he finally looked up at him. They were focused, though, and there was a lot of guts and determination shining alongside the restrained fury, as if it weren't for him. It was an unselfish fury, like poetic justice. I just want to annihilate all the titans, he replied in a strained voice full of anger and determination. I wish to murder them all. But Naruto arched an eyebrow once more, his eyes gleaming with resolve but with a hint of solemnity. I also want to see the world, the outside world, he said. Everyone has the right to live and experience everything in this world since we are all born free. With a wry smile, Naruto concluded, well said, I think you will fit in fine with those lunatics. What? Hee. Yeah, the Legion has some interesting characters, you see there's. That evening's dinner ended on a more positive note as Naruto cracked jokes and talked about some of his more fascinating and enjoyable encounters with the Legion. Well, it was enjoyable for him, but his pranks recipients weren't exactly thrilled, but they did make people laugh and keep their attention. It was that time of the week yes, 3DMG Practicia. After a few days of conditioning and coursework on military theory and strategy, everyone looks forward to this class, unless they are really bad at it. Fortunately, those who are bad have already been eliminated. Naruto, on the other hand, was a little bored. Sure, it would be much more enjoyable than the classes he had to endure or the simple conditioning exercises, for him. But using the 3D maneuver gear without chakra to boost him and help him move faster and more precisely was going to be boring. Erwin had a point when he said he should only use his chakra outside the walls with the Scouting Legion because it would draw unwanted attention to him, but that would be like telling a bird, "Hey, don't use your wings unless I say so." Henge was very helpful for tricks, and Naruto has been using chakra since he first learned how to perform a jutsu. Naruto assumed he would have to deal with it for a year before things returned to normal, but that didn't mean he stopped training whenever he had the chance. The deep forests that surrounded the camp were very helpful. With his hands clasped behind his head, he was bored and staring up at the sky while wearing his military uniform from the first day of the expedition. Shikamaru would have liked the clouds today, he thought to himself. Naruto was unaware that he was the subject of numerous discussions at the moment. Jean Kirstein, a brazen and arrogant young man, was standing beside Connie Springer, a short child with a buzz cut, and was looking at him. Well, now we get to see if he is all talk or not, Jean muttered as they were putting on their harnesses. With a nervous glance between the two, Connie sighed and said, "Well, I may be an idiot, but even I know that if the Scouting Legion sponsored him he must be good." Jean merely mumbled, "Whatever," and scoffed. A similar conversation took place between a tall, dark-haired adolescent of the same age with low self-esteem named Berthold Fubar and a bulky, stern-looking blonde named Rainer Braun. "Well, Berthold, we can now see exactly what kind of soldier he is. I suppose," he said haltingly with Eren, Mikasa, and Armin. They were getting their equipment on like everyone else when they noticed our resident blonde shinobi. Eren was the first to notice and said, "Well, now we can see why the Scouting Legion sponsored him." "I don't know." Mikasa raised an eyebrow at Armin's comment and questioned him, "What don't you know, Armin?" "I mean, I feel like there's something else to him that caught their attention." He responded with a thoughtful expression on his face, as if there is something more about him that we are missing. "Armin, are you certain you're not just overanalyzing the situation?" A skeptical Ren asked, but the man seemed fine with him. "I don't know, there has to be something different about him if he could survive beyond the walls for 3 years. After that, the conversation fell silent, which made Mikasa and Eren think more deeply about the mysterious Naruto Uzumaki. Although Eren didn't sense anything negative or suspicious about Naruto, he seemed very sincere. It's difficult not to like the guy. There's something about him that makes you want to trust or befriend him. After hearing Armin's thoughts about Naruto, Mikasa was unsure of what to think. After all, everyone has secrets, including the fact that she and Eren killed those kidnappers. She unintentionally echoed Eren's thoughts about Naruto's aura, wondering if it was his laid-back demeanor or carefree smile that seemed to attract people. Despite only being at the camp for a few days, he already has people chatting with him as if he had been there from the start. Eren's final response was, "It doesn't mean he is a bad person though, Armin." "I am aware of that." In defense, he shot back, "I was just saying that there is probably more to him than we think." "Yeah, well, no argument on that front. What in the world are you meatbags doing here? Now get in formation." Keith Shaddis, who had just arrived, barked. To await orders, everyone hurried into their standby positions. "We will now put your ability to locate and dispatch the Titans in a timely and effective manner to the test. We have positioned your targets at random throughout the training forest. They mimic the height and gait of Titans. They will turn and pivot, but they might not move as quickly as a Titan. Attacking the nape is going to require effort. You are divided into 3 platoons, each consisting of 3 squads." He concluded with a grin that only widened when he heard the enthusiastic murmurs. "The person who attacks the most out of the 3 platoons will get a special prize." Naruto took his place in the 2nd squad of the 3rd platoon, alongside Eren, Mikasa, Armin, a girl named Sasha, a boy named Thomas, the adorable Krista, and Ymir. "First platoon. You're awake," he let out a bark. When he saw their excited faces, he suppressed another grin and waited for them to take their places before shouting, "Start." As he watched the first platoon of 3 launch themselves into the forest, Naruto couldn't quite put his finger on it, but this exercise seemed to remind him of something. He thought to himself, let's see what have I done where I had to take a test with weird vague rules where I had something on the line. 15 minutes later, when the second platoon took their turn at the first, strangely, never returnada, he was still considering it. Perhaps they take you somewhere else when you finish? He asked. He sneered to himself. I can't believe Kakashi-sensei called his test for Team 7 a survival test when there was a test like the second exam in Konoha. It did have some things that were similar to the first test where we had to look underneath to figure out we needed teamwork, but it was just a spar really. Wait, I know there is something familiar about this. Chunin exams. The first test had weird rules. The second was a survival test. Look underneath. The underneath teamwork, this guy is pitting us against each other like Kakashi-sensei did us. He must be testing us. Naruto froze? I know in the Scouting Legion we relied on teamwork to deal with the tough titans or when there was a bad situation. That Shadis guy probably meant the squad that gets the most targets wins, not the individual. Huh. And they said I was an idiot. He smiled to himself as he surreptitiously glanced at the nearby squads of the third platoon and saw that they were standing alone and not speaking to each other. They were probably going to break the formation of their squad and look for the targets themselves so they could get the prize. But then, in a puff of smoke, an imaginary little Kakashi materialized on his shoulder and said, "Good job, Naruto." With his trademark eye smile and upbeat tone that sounded too good to be true, and it only took you. He concluded, feigning to glance at a watch on his wrist, almost 30 minutes to figure out. Damn his fictional Kakashi downplaying his intellect, what a clever accomplishment. Naruto almost got face faulted there. Eren looked determined. Armin was nervous. Mikasa was stoic, nothing changed. Sasha was both hungry and nervous. Thomas was intimidated. Krista was cutely worried. And Ymir was bored. He complained to himself a little more before turning to his squad. Hey guys, he said, grabbing everyone's attention and gesturing for them to huddle around him. I think this is a test about teamwork. He said, to hit the most targets, we must cooperate. There were some raised eyebrows and confused looks, but Armin did appear to be considering it. What are you saying? Eren asked. You heard Shadis say that the person who attacks the most targets gets a special prize. You are divided into squads, he said, and the person who attacks the most will win a prize. Armin understood that he was manipulating his words and adding motivation to stir up trouble in the squads. Yes, in that manner teamwork is essential in the Scouting Legion, Naruto reaffirmed. Teamwork is even more important than your own skills. Therefore, we can achieve the most goals and take home the prize if we cooperate, Krista cried out. Oh. Everyone started to perspire when Sasha started to drool at the prospect of extra food. I hope it's extra meals. Well, what should we do now? Thomas, a little more assured that he wouldn't have to compete against someone like Mikasa, asked. Armin said, I think we should move in this formation through the forest, drawing a simple inverted V, with a hint of confidence. We will move like this through the forest a couple meters apart from each other, so while we are still in formation, we can still have a wide view to find the targets faster. That seems like a plan. Guys, let's get started. Naruto smiled at everyone in the group. Before he could turn around, Eren called out to him, Hey, Naruto. When Eren finished, Naruto turned to face him and said, Thanks for telling us. We would have just ran off by ourselves if you hadn't have said anything. You guys don't need to thank me. We are comrades and are going to be soldiers fighting next to each other, Naruto said with a friendly smile directed at Eren and the others, who nodded in agreement. I will always be there for you. He concluded by squinting his eyes and grinning like a fox. Shadis smirked as he turned to face the final platoon, but it wavered when he saw the second squad, which included the new recruit, emerge from a huddle to confront the forest once more. They appeared more assured than before, but they didn't figure it out, did they? Shaking the idea from his mind, he yelled, Is the third platoon ready? Start. 2 of the 3 squads scattered into the forest to search alone when the third platoon launched, but Shadis observed that the remaining squad, led by the new kid, remained together, grinning to himself. The Scouting Legion sure found themselves an interesting one. Naruto felt confined. This year was going to be difficult. Training in secret was going to be annoying as well. It was strange for him to launch through the trees in a device like the 3DMG rather than tree hopping with chakra like a shinobi. Even when he used the device, he still used chakra with it to move faster and make sharper turns or scale obstacles easier. His thoughts were interrupted when he noticed a group of 4 targets, each about 12 meters tall and essentially wooden cutouts of a titan's general shape. The bullseye was the padding on the nape of the neck, which is thick to measure the trainees' slashes when they attack. The gears of the simulated titan were being pulled by rope by some other soldiers, causing it to pivot and turn in place to increase the difficulty, if only slightly. Let's go, Armin, Mikasa, and Eren. Even if one of you has already done it, you guys take the two in front and cut it. Krista and Ymir take the left one, take the person on the right. Sasha and Thomas, if you've already eliminated your target, help the others. All right. Everyone responded. How about you? Eren inquired. I'm going to pretend to be a deviant in order to get the hidden one. Now get moving. What? A secret one? Hello. Hold on. They had never had any hidden ones like that before, so where was it anyway? Eren squawked out in surprise. Come on, Eren, even if the Titans are phony, we can't allow him to become isolated. This is about teamwork, right? Armin said. You can never be sure if you have cut it deep enough. The group moved swiftly and effectively, and even when someone cut down the target, the partner still followed up to cut it down as well. Naruto discovered the hidden target behind the nearby tree that was ready to appear in front of unsuspecting trainees, which would probably pivot to turn right in front of them, causing them to panic and possibly crash, unless they were Mikasa, who is simply too calm and stoic to be surprised by something like this, or Naruto. All Naruto had to do was land on the branch above it, descend to its neck, and cut it open. From then on, the test was easy. They eventually took out 19 targets together, compared to the maximum of 6 targets taken out by any other individual. The other platoons were too busy trying to steal each other's kills in order to get the most, though some, like Reiner and Bertholdt, stuck together and still competed with one another. They all grinned or smirked when Shadis said, the winners of the test today are 3rd Platoon, 2nd Squad consisting of Mikasa Ackerman, Eren Yeager, Armin Arlert, Sasha Brous, Thomas Wagner, Krista Renz, Ymir, and Naruto Uzumaki. I understand what the majority of you meatbags are thinking. Why is the entire squad winning when I thought there would only be one winner? He made fun of the bewildered trainees. They discovered the actual purpose of this test, which is teamwork. They ignored what I said and joined forces to eliminate the targets. They put aside their self-serving desires and united. Although we soldiers lack the Titan's ability to regenerate decapitation and monstrous physical strength, we do have our blades, our teamwork, and our inventiveness. You are fighting a Titan as a team, not as an individual. You cover their back, and they cover yours. He glared at some of them and said, they accomplished so much more as a team than any of you by yourself. The military places a high value on teamwork, so if you want to succeed as a soldier, fulfill your dreams, and achieve your objectives, you will need to swallow your pride and collaborate with the man or woman standing next to you, because they might be the one to save you from the actual jaws of death. He concluded solemnly, making most people, including some of the instructors, swallow. Now that this team has earned their reward, there will be no kitchen duties or chores for a month, meal seconds for 2 weeks, and finally a single opportunity to sentence one individual to latrine duty. He concluded with a menacing grin, which was naturally reflected by the majority of the squad and sent chills down the spines of most people. Mister? Is it okay to talk? Speak freely, Uzumaki? I just have a question. Sir, thank you. Does everyone in the camp, including the instructors and teachers, get the same punishment? Shadis didn't know why, but the innocent way he asked was really making him nervous. He wanted to say no, but before he could. Again, Naruto said innocently, you did say a single person, not a trainee, sir. With a distinct tick above his eye, Shadis thought, cheeky brat. Yes, when you put it that way it does. I know I'm going to regret this. I appreciate you clarifying that, sir, Naruto said cheerfully before he started to chuckle evilly to himself while rubbing his hands together as he planned things out. A little brown nosing never hurt anyone that much, so most people decide it was in their best interest to suddenly be very nice to Naruto and the 2nd Squad, especially until they choose someone. All right. You're all fired. The majority were still in disbelief, but Shadis said, tomorrow is conditioning again, as he started to leave. Wonderful. Come on, let's eat dinner. I'm eager for seconds. As they made their way to the mess hall, Sasha's cry jolted everyone out of their reverie. As he strolled with his squad, Naruto smiled to himself. Things weren't as horrible as he had anticipated, and so far, the people his age were enjoyable to be around. Oh no. Another opponent fell to the ground, and Naruto sighed. As the tall teenager named Franz stumbled to stand up, Naruto whimpered, come on Franz, you can do better than this. I'm barely trying here. Not all of us are as good at hand-to-hand as you are, Naruto, Franz murmured. Naruto boasted, trying to sound casual. Well, you got me there. Not everyone can be as awesome as me. Naturally, this made a few people who heard him shudder. Naruto waved as he attempted to assess the recruits in this hand-to-hand exercise. Well Franz, I'm gonna see if anyone else can fight. See ya. He said. One person disarmed and defended, while the other charged as a bandit brandishing a fake knife. Naturally, they taught you how to do it, but Naruto didn't give a damn. He was more of a quick thinker and fighter than Frog Kumite. As Naruto moved through the ranks, he noticed that some people were taking it seriously, while others, like Jean, who was half asleep, and Connie and Sasha, were making strange noises and posing in strange ways. Fought? Annie came next. She wasn't fighting anyone. She was just aimlessly wandering around. That answers the question of who his next partner will be. Naruto called out, "Hey Annie," as he approached her. As he went on, she hardly looked at him. "Let's spar, come on, you aren't fighting anyone right now." Her expression changed to one of irritation as she asked, "Why?" With a head tilt, Naruto asked, "Why what? Why do this exercise? There is no point." He positioned himself loosely and declared, "Now come on, I'll attack. You never know when you need to fight unarmed." With a sigh, Annie assumed her own position. She hunched her shoulders inward and pushed her right foot back a step. It resembled a guarding boxing stance as she raised her hands in front of her face. When Naruto examined the stance, he saw that it was basic but well balanced. However, the fundamentals are always beneficial. They are known as the foundations for a reason. He grasped the fictitious knife, but he thought it was terrible because it was heavy, difficult to throw, and lacked a ring in the hilt like the incredible and multi-purpose kunai, through which wire or rope could be strung. He went in for a thrusting stab, charging at a steady pace to ensure fair play. Annie surprised Naruto by moving around his arm and locking it in a grappling lock. Naruto broke the lock and proceeded to slash. Naruto leapt over Annie's low kick after she ducked. Naruto complimented him, saying, "Nice job, I'm sure that would have really stung. Her technique was excellent." Exasperated, she said, "Can I go then?" "Nope," Naruto chirruped with a grin. "It ends if you can disarm me." At that moment, they both charged at one another. The spar turned into a dance of blows to decide the winner. With thrusts, slashes, dodges, grapples, counters, and feints, it turned into a game of chess, with each team trying to outsmart the other and put them in a trap that would result in checkmate. They broke off from the last entanglement and began to circle each other, ignoring the odd glance they would occasionally get. "Your technique is great. Where did you learn it?" Naruto asked at the end. She curtly replied, "My father." Naruto remarked, "Your father is a great teacher then." Annie's eyes flashed with a range of emotions, and she grimaced a little. They departed so swiftly that Naruto nearly missed it. "Let's call this spar a draw, Annie," he said, realizing that he had reached a difficult point. Annie broke her stance as Naruto did, and then stated, "This doesn't matter. There isn't any point in doing this. Martial arts won't improve your score. The only ones allowed to join the military police and live deep within the walls are those in the top 10. The only ones who take this seriously are people who do whatever they are told, and idiots like you. For whatever reason, the better equipped to fight titans you are, the farther you are assigned from them. Where do you think this farce begins?" she said darkly, approaching Naruto directly and coming within inches of his face. Annie's eyes widened slightly at Naruto's casual response, probably from those who have never seen a titan and want to keep it that way by buying the military off like the king. "What? I'm not that gullible." Angrily, Naruto thought to himself. "Isn't it because that is just how humans really are? That is pretty damn cynical. Not everyone is like that. You can't hold everyone in the world to the same standard as those selfish pricks," Naruto said with a scowl. Annie simply chose to leave, but she said, "Anyway, I'm not stupid enough to play soldier in this shitty world." She paused on her way out when Naruto responded, who said, "I'm playing around. I have already experienced what it is like to fight titans. I'm not doing this for glory, prestige, revenge, or some selfish need to get into Cena. I'm doing this because someone has to go out there and fight titans to make sure humanity survives and innocents stay safe. So be cynical, be selfish. It's alright because I'll be out there making sure you can do those things. But know this, if everyone thought like you did, we would all be dead because there wouldn't be anyone left to fight." Naruto left after saying that, not noticing or giving a damn about the looks he received from people who heard. They were mostly uneasy, guilty, and thoughtful. Annie was staring at his retrenchment, but she couldn't read. Naruto continued to move. He disregarded Eren and Reiner's attempt to challenge Annie, even though he naively believed they would be kicked in the ass. He was no longer interested in sparring XXX. He was still in a bad mood from his talk with Annie, so he ate his dinner quietly in the mess hall. Eren and Armin were seated in front of him at a table to Mikasa's right when he heard Jean attempting to persuade Marco Bot that he merely wants to join the military police in order to live a comfortable life behind bars. He was startled out of his reverie. "An easy life, deep inside the walls," Eren said abruptly. "Until 5 years ago, this was considered deep inside the walls." Looking, Jean asked angrily, "What's your point, Eren? You don't need to go to the interior," he said simply. "You've gone soft enough in your own head." Jean's eye twitched with anger and frustration when he heard the suppressed laughter of those who overheard the conversation, It twitched even more. Bastard. Don't you think it's strange that we are training to fight titans, just to end up farther from them? Eren asked. Annie must have yelled at him too, said Naruto, raising an eyebrow. Who cares? Jean laughed. For my own sake, I hope they keep this stupid system. You piece of shit. Eren snarled angrily as he leapt to his feet. Shut up. This is reality, Jean shouted back, rising angrily. Mikasa stood up and calmly said, That's enough. Mikasa took Eren's hand and brought it down to his side while still holding it lightly. Eren ignored Armin's request for him to stop and grabbed the front of Jean's shirt. Ready to yell at him further, Eren glanced at her and then averted his eyes remorsefully. But Jean yelled, Screw you bastard, as she yanked Eren's shirt from the display. The reply was, Stop, my clothes will rip, Eren yelled. WHO cares about your clothes? I'm so envious. What are you talking about? Although Naruto found the entire situation amusing, he did observe Eren's abrupt pause as Jean continued to yell at him, which was followed by a look of surprise before turning into one of resolve. However, Naruto's eyes widened when he witnessed Eren trip and fall Jean flat on his back using a crude mimicry of Annie's grappling technique. Yes, he did spar with Annie. Jean rubbed his aching head and sat up, saying, What the hell was that? Glancing down at Jean, Eren responded, The martial arts I went through a world of hurt to learn while you were screwing around. Naruto thought to himself, and he got his ass kicked like I thought too. Eren kept going, You think taking the easy way out, doing as you please, is reality? And you can call yourself a soldier? At that moment, the entire mess hall was silent because everyone was staring at them. Nobody knew how to respond. Everyone turned to watch the door open. The instructor, Keith Shadis, arrived halfway through and asked solemnly, I heard quite a commotion, would someone like to explain? With a face that matched Captain Yamamoto's grim expression. Mikasa raised her hand and said in a stoic voice, That sound was Sasha and Naruto's farts. Naruto was about to make a sarcastic remark about how everyone was debating what the main reason he is so awesome is that it got too heated and turned into a brawl, with one side claiming his great personality and wit, another his badass skills, and a third his dashing good looks. Naruto stumbled out of his chair, shocked that Mikasa of all people had just played a practical joke on him, while Sasha gasped in disbelief and betrayal. As Shadis said, You two again? Everyone started to laugh uncontrollably. Sasha let out another horrified gasp. Shadis said, Learn to control yourselves, and walked out of the building. As she clung to her, Sasha whimpered, Mikasa, why would you do such a thing? I never did anything to you. Was it something I said? Until Naruto shoved a bread roll into her mouth, she stopped. She turned to face Naruto, blushing a little at the gesture and the food, then began to chew and cock her head in perplexity. Naruto chuckled ominously at the unasked question that caused others to regard him with suspicion. He continued, I did that because, you don't need to worry about this. As everyone stared at him with suspicion, she eventually swallowed the bread, and Mikasa started to feel uneasy. Huh? Why not? He asked. With sadistic glee, Naruto responded, Because Mikasa seems to have forgotten that I am the only one that has not punished anyone with latrine duty from the reward. Mikasa blanched in horror, and Sasha nodded in comprehension, her mouth forming a, oh, to boot. Naruto concluded, laughing uncontrollably, There is also that fact that I haven't gone to the toilet yet. Hee mwahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahahah At that, everyone flinched in sympathy. Tomorrow was not something Mikasa was excited about. Perhaps she ought to have mentioned someone else instead of just Sasha? XXX, it's here at last. The graduation day. 219 trainees survived. Dedicate your hearts. As the graduates saluted in response, the instructor heard a loud grunt of affirmation and the rustle and snap of clothing and boots snapping into place simultaneously. Today, you trainee graduates will be given 3 choices. You can join the Garrison Corps, protecting the towns and reinforcing the walls, or the Scouting Legion, who risk their lives beyond the walls in Titan territory, or the Military Police, who serve the king, lead the people, and protect internal order. Of course, only the top 10 trainees whose names were just announced can join the Military Police. In front of the others were 10 trainees arranging themselves in a row according to their rank. First Ackerman, Mikasa 2 Braun, Reiner 3 Uzumaki Naruto. 4 Fubar Bertholdt 5th Lenhart, Annie 6th Yeager Eren. 7 Kirschstein, Jean 8 Bot, Marco 9 Springer, Connie. 10 Blouse, Sasha. The year and a few months have gone by, and I'm finally going back to the Legion, Naruto thought to himself. And back to kicking ass. He grinned determinedly as he looked up at the sky. XXX currently, The 104th Trainee Corps was celebrating their graduation in a Trost building. Everyone appeared content as food and drinks were distributed. I did it. I'm gonna join the military police. We won't go hungry anymore. Naturally, not everyone was pleased. How did I score lower than Eren? Damn it. You can't be serious. I understand Naruto not joining the military police since he has already been with the Scouting Legion with them finding him, so he wants to stay with them, but you too, Eren? Thomas asked incredulously when Naruto heard his name. He turned to the conversation with Sasha and Connie. Another trainee said, you put in all that work to make it into the top 10 though. I'd decided at the beginning I wasn't training to go live in the interior, I was training to fight them, Eren replied with a straight face. However, Thomas gave him a disbelieving look before yelling, you'll never beat them. At that point, the party fell silent with trepidation. Thomas surveyed the area before continuing. You do know how many tens of thousands have been eaten by them? We lost over 20% of our population, so we know for sure humans cannot defeat the Titans. So, Eren pushed Thomas, asking, if you think we can't win, you'll just give up? Well, it's true that humanity has suffered defeat until now, but we didn't know anything about the Titans then. Fighting them head on is pointless. We did lose, but the information we gained gives us hope for next time. Will we abandon the tactics that cost tens of thousands of lives to develop, and let the Titans eat us without a fight? Hell no. Eren cried in frustration. I am going to exterminate the Titans and escape these cramped walls. That is my dream. Humanity isn't finished yet, he said, pausing as his tirade stunned everyone abruptly. He dashed outdoors, followed by Mikasa and Armin. After observing them depart, Naruto nodded to Sasha and Connie and trailed behind. He observed them conversing while seated on the adjacent stairs outside. He heard Eren say, yeah, I got that from you. To live outside the walls freely. I'm joining the Scouting Legion too, exclaimed Armin abruptly. Armin, are you serious? You got the best test score, you should use that. With a determined expression, he answered, I'm not going to hold you back. Mikasa whispered, I'm joining the Scouting Legion too. Oi, you're the top-ranked person. Join the military police, Eren cried again. If you join the military police, then I'll do that. If you join the garrison, then I'll join too. You'll send yourself to an early grave without me, Mikasa responded. With a frustrated sigh, Eren said, no one asked you to do this. Mikasa muttered, I don't want to lose someone else. You should respect their determination, Eren. Naruto? Eren squawked in surprise as Mikasa and Armin turned to face the new voice. Naruto continued to ignore him. Respect their decisions, be glad you have such loyal friends, or do you not believe in them? Is that why you are trying to hold them back, keep them safe? What? No, I believe in them. Biting back, Naruto said, then act like it. You want to join the Scouting Legion, you want to kill all the Titans, you can't do that all by yourself. Naruto yelled. The Scouting Legion relies on trust and teamwork. How can you be a part of them if you can't believe in your closest friends? Eren was taken aback when he was told, according to Naruto, no one can shoulder everything by themselves. We all need help. Sometimes your friends want to help you achieve your goal. Don't be so prideful as to reject that. As much as individual strength is important, teamwork is even more so. After that, he went back to party, leaving Eren in shock and his closest friends to think about what he had said. XXX Naruto and a few of the trainees were outside Trost's gate the following day. They're here. The main force of the Scouting Legion. Commander Erwin. Kill the Titans for us. Look, it's Corporal Levi. They say he is as strong as an entire brigade. Naruto was the only one who heard Levi chuckle when he said, TCH, shut up, so freaking annoying. This is totally different than 5 years ago, Eren said with a grin. There are so many people who have high hope for the Scouting Legion. Hannah exclaimed joyfully, everyone has cheered up, nothing bad has happened in 5 years. And they improved the fixed cannons, Franz continued, maybe the big Titans won't come again. Right? Incredulous, Naruto asked, are you serious? You can't seriously believe that, you stupid lovebirds. Eren yelled angrily as he turned to face the couple. Franz and Hannah simply blushed and felt ashamed when Armin made a sheepish attempt to soothe him. Hannah questioned, why you think we're a happy couple? You're getting ahead of yourself, Eren, Franz said, attempting to avoid their stare. Hey, you guys, said a familiar voice as Eren shivered with comical rage. Hannes? Eren asked, turning to face the man who had saved his life 5 years prior. He grinned nostalgically and remarked, it's hard to believe you're the little brats I remember. Eren teased, what about you, Hannes? You've gone from being a drunk to a captain of the combat engineers. He pounded him on the head and said, "TCH, listen to you." He then became serious and added, "I'm still sorry I was unable to save your mother. It wasn't your fault, Hannes. We aren't ignorant anymore. I'll never let anything that sad happen again. We will defeat the Titans." Naruto heard, but he left to speak with the Scouting Legion before they left because he knew the conversation was becoming too personal. Eren certainly knew how to be dramatic and deliver speeches, but Naruto simply shook his head. However, he moved away from the crowd and in the direction of Erwin, Mike, Hanji, Levi, and his group. "Hey guys!" exclaimed Naruto. The sudden, familiar-sounding shout startled them at first, but they quickly realized why, and in Oruo's case, they all either grinned, remained stoic, smirked, or scowled in rage before he left. Hay was still furious about that prank. However, please be aware that the prank will not be discussed because of its graphic and painful cruelty. Just be aware that his old horse was constantly glaring at him, so he had to get a new one. "I'm sorry." Responses ranged from Naruto, sup, brat, grr. A cheeky, hee hey Oro, how's, was Naruto saying. He darkly responded to the reminder of the practical joke that wounded his body and his pride, saying, "Grr, I'm gonna get you back, brat. You won't know when or how, but know that I am after you." It was unknown, but it also caused people who heard it to laugh to themselves or shudder in disgust or horror. He turned to the commander and said, "Commander, you couldn't wait a day for me to get officially in before you went out on the expedition?" "I'm hurt." Naruto cried in a mocking cry of sadness. "I look forward to you trying," he said with a predatory smile. "We had your graduation day marked wrong and we had already planned out this expedition. We couldn't hold it off just for you," Erwin said, shaking his head and grinning slightly. "TCH, now I gotta wait some more before I can display my awesomeness again." Naruto pouted, which made people laugh. He eventually joined in before becoming serious. "All right, what is the extent of the casualties?" "They rose after you left," Erwin said with a sigh. "Without you skills, we returned to 30% during the following few expeditions." "Yes, indeed, things will change with unwavering resolve," Naruto said, "and not just me coming too." "What are you saying?" Hanji inquired. "I know some of my graduating class are gonna join." "Really? The brats are usually too scared to join," Levi asked doubtfully. In response, some Legion members raised their eyebrows. "Well, there is this one trainee, Eren Yeager. He's pretty dramatic, sometimes saying he is going to kill all the Titans," they said. "But he does have a lot of guts and he wants to join the Legion. It's been his dream along with being free outside the walls." Some members appeared thoughtful. "He's pretty good too, not the best, but he was ranked 6th. In any case, keep an eye on him and allow him to join. I'm sure he'll do fantastic, Commander," Naruto concluded. After giving a nod, Erwin said, "Noted, Eren Yeager. Well, we got to get going, Naruto. You should get to your post." "All right, see you all." He waved, and they reciprocated by waving goodbye. XXX. "Sasha, what are you doing?" Naruto stared in shock at what he was witnessing. It was truly amusing. "Anyo," she replied sheepishly, "I'm getting some meat from this officer's storehouse." Before he removed the meat from her hands and concealed it in his jacket, Naruto couldn't help but laugh. "Come on, where were you gonna take it?" "What are you going to do?" "I'm cleaning the 34th cannon battery over the gate," with trepidation, she asked. Naruto ignored her shocked expression and ushered, "Take for you, so if you get caught you won't get in trouble, now come on." They eventually reached her squad while they were telling Eren, who was taken aback, that they were joining the Scouting Legion. A few people laughed when Naruto said, mockingly, "Eren, your dramatic speeches have an effect on people. You should use them wisely." Eren responded, "Why are you here, Naruto?" He held up the meat with a conspiratorial grin and said, "I'm hurt, Eren, and hear me and Sasha thought to share this meat from the storehouse with you at lunch." Naturally, Sasha started salivating at the sight of the meat again. They all let out a collective gasp. "Are any of you interested in going to jail? You guys really are idiots, an idiot duo. Idiots are scary. But everybody, we can cut it up and put it in sandwiches." Sasha abruptly exclaimed. The idea of such a meal made her shiver with delight. "Return it now." "You're correct. After all the land we lost, meat is really valuable," Mina confirmed. "It'll be fine." Naruto sighed as Sasha took the meat to conceal it until lunchtime. "What worrywarts," he sulked. "Yeah, once we retake the land, we can raise cows and sheep again," Sasha said. They gave it some thought, and all of a sudden they were hungry and self-assured. "I'll also have some." "Yeah, go ahead and cut it up." "Of course, I'll have some too." However, Eren simply grinned and said, "You guys. Let's get back to it, or they will find out." "Yeah." Naruto smiled and gave him a pat on the back. Save some for me, and I'll see you all at lunch. You got it, Naruto. As he returned to his position a few cannons below, Sasha waved. Mina teased, come on Eren, it isn't lunchtime yet. As a shadow suddenly loomed over Naruto, he was startled out of his stride by the sound of lightning striking with a flash of yellowish green. He heard the faint sound of something steaming and felt the air around him suddenly become extremely hot. He turned to see what it was, but his breath caught in his throat. The 60-meter tall colossal titan stood in front of them, staring at them as if they were nothing more than a nuisance. They all activated their 3DMG, with the exception of Samuel, who kept falling freely. Just as Naruto heard someone gasp suddenly, steam erupted, pushing them all off the edge. Naruto was unable to even latch on with chakra in time. Recalling the hook, Sasha ran down the wall and, with remarkable accuracy, hooked Samuel with the cable, stabbing him with it as she hung with one cable in the wall while the other held up Samuel. Samuel would be hurt, but the alternative. Hey, Samuel. Are you okay? Sasha called out. Geez, that was close. Nice one, Sasha, Naruto yelled. The squad's attention was drawn to something else, though, and when they looked down to the right, they saw that the wall's gate was completely destroyed and could not be repaired. Someone has broken through the wall. Never again. There will be another invasion by the Titans. Annihilate, Eren muttered abruptly, and Naruto heard it. Every one of you. Fixed Cannon Maintenance Team 4, Eren abruptly exclaimed, pausing to pull out his swords. Get ready for combat. Before he started to swing to the top with Eren, who was still shouting, our target is the colossal titan before us. Naruto mocked himself for freezing up. This is our opportunity, keep it from escaping. The enormous titan was drawn to Naruto and Eren when they landed atop the wall. Yo, Naruto observed Eren glaring fearlessly at the creature that could easily crush him. It's been 5 years, he said. Naruto thought, I knew he was dramatic. Hey, my name is Naruto, but we haven't met yet. I just wanted to let you know who killed you. Common courtesy and all that. Naruto yelled as he approached the titan and slowly pulled out his swords. Before taking off, he yelled again, so, pleased to make your acquaintance. With incredible speed, he swung right by its ear and said, as I go by it, I'm prepared to cut the neck that's around the corner. Please die for me. XXOMAKE XXX, sparked by a recent commercial and my boredom. Because he didn't have enough money for a new one, Naruto was browsing a 3DMG dealership for parts and entire devices. They had the newest models as well as used ones from as far away as Trost to Walsina in the capital. The money must be saved. As he browsed further, one caught his attention. It was gorgeous and stylish. It was painted orange instead of the typical metallic sheen. It was incredible. Naruto had to have such a 3DMG, and the idea of using it was already making him practically drool. A 3DMG dealer noticed his interest as he got closer and smiled. He approached with a phony smile and said, Hey, sir. It appears that you are considering this excellent used gadget. Are you serious? I think this was meant to be, Naruto said in awe. Our relationship was meant to be. You can look amazing in orange while fighting and killing titans. Sweat drops formed on everyone who heard his orange passionate response. Alright. You don't need to search any farther. This is high-quality 3DMG from the capital's factory, which the king personally oversees. Custom made by a commander of an entire garrison unit until he sold it when he retired, the dealer said, pausing as he heard multiple gasps from listeners. What are your thoughts? Thinking he had this sale in the bag, he concluded with a smile. It's incredible. Naruto exclaimed dramatically with anime tears flowing down his face in joy, but, he suddenly stood up and was very serious as he continued, show me the gear facts. The dealer squeaked out, WW what? And turned horribly pale. Then he heard someone to his right say, show him the gear facts. To his left, he noticed a toddler-sized, burnt orange fox with 9 tails, a white shirt that read, Gear Fox, and red eyes with black fur surrounding them that reached to its large, strangely rabbit-like ears. When the strange fox suddenly materialized, Naruto simply nodded in agreement and said, yeah, show me the gear facts. I want to know if it's worth the money I'm spending. The damn fox again interrupted the dealer as he was saying, why you sure I can lower the price? It claims that its owner, a commander, was intoxicated and reckless during combat, crashing into a building and destroying his 3DMG before being devoured. He apparently retired from life. It had to be rebuilt with parts from other devices to even work again, the fox said, growling as he read the gear facts from a paper. Naruto started to look expectantly at the dealer, which made him perspire uncomfortably. All right. 10% off, he cried out. The odd fox and Naruto started to look at him blankly. 25% off? As more perspiration started to form, he squeaked out. The fox, Naruto, and now the eavesdroppers all started to gaze. All right, 50% off, desperately, he cried. You mentioned that it was totaled, Gear Fox? Innocently, Naruto asked. Yes, absolutely, probably 75% of it isn't its original part, the fox said naively. All right, 75% off, take it, please, he shouted in desperation and embarrassment. Naruto shrugged and said, okay if you insist. With his new orange 3D MG on his waist and the same Gear Fox resting on his shoulder, Naruto left behind a sobbing dealer in the 3D MG dealership with the meager sum of money while whistling a cheerful tune. It's unbelievable that they fell for that, Kurama, correct? Naruto laughed. The fox Kurama responded with a grin that was far too sinister to be sincere. Hey, messing with humans and leaving them a crying sniveling mess always was a fun pastime for me. We should do this more often. Although I wouldn't have phrased it precisely as you did, I'm always game for a good joke. Please die for me. Time had come now he could eliminate one of the greatest dangers. The face is directly surrounded by the nape of the neck. In the back of his mind, Naruto noticed that even though he was traveling through the already hot steaming air, it was getting hotter however. He didn't care because it was too late and he was already rearing back his swords to slice it open. At that moment, enormous volumes of steam were forced out of the colossal titan, pushing Naruto away from his target. The blast of steam nearly scorched Naruto, sending him flying and forcing him to use his 3D MG to right himself in the air. He was able to hook his cable in one of the arms, but the arm he hooked onto was reared back and brought forward. The massive titan brought his massive arm down on top of the wall, and with its amazing strength, it scraped all of the fixed cannons off the wall near the gate. However, Naruto went along for the ride because he was attached to the arm. Fucked. Looking at the wall he was about to crash into, Naruto swore. After removing his cable from the arm, Naruto attacked the colossal titan's torso with a second cable. Major whiplash caused Naruto to grunt, but he abruptly lost his anchor. The colossal titan was no longer there, letting Naruto fall freely. Gosh. Oh no. Oh no. As he fell, Naruto cursed again. His whiplash and flipping and turning in the air disrupted his sense of depth, making it difficult for him to hook onto the wall. Naruto. A voice call was heard by Naruto. There were two grunts, one from Naruto and the other from his rescuer, who crashed into him while trying to save him. Man. I got you. Hurry up. Eren yelled after regaining his concentration. Naruto was able to fire his cable precisely at his target at the top of the wall. When Naruto and Eren arrived at the summit, they looked at the location where the colossal titan vanished. How could something so massive appear and vanish so quickly? It wasn't like they had imagined it because all of the damage was real, and those massive, pillar-like feet left some noticeable footprints. Naruto, Eren, have you guys killed it? Thomas called. No, it disappeared, Naruto replied in confusion. Eren apologized. Yeah, sorry. If only he had been faster, but that titan was unquestionably sentient. He saw its eyes widen at Naruto's speed, and for a moment it appeared desperate, before it targeted specific objects like the gate and the cannons if titans begin to fight intelligently. Hey, it's not time for conversation. The wall has been breached, and if we don't fix it quickly, the titans will get in like they did last time, Connie yelled at everyone. Right now, Naruto wished he had an affinity for the earth so he could have at least constructed a makeshift wall. What are all of you up to? When they turned to see who it was, they discovered that it was a member of the garrison. The colossal titan's backup plan has already started. They all heard arrive at headquarters. Remember to report if you came into contact with it. At this point, Naruto wasn't really paying attention because he still didn't understand how it could vanish in such a way. Why couldn't any of the titans do that until now? If they were present, why didn't they attack until 5 years ago? They had 100 years to do this kind of damage, and humanity didn't have half the technology and fighting strategies they did now. They could have wiped out humanity long ago, so why wait until now? Hi, Naruto. Come on. Naruto dismissed the thoughts and followed his fellow trainees to headquarters. He was also troubled by the Scouting Legion's departure on an expedition, as staying could have prevented the invasion, especially with someone like Levi present. Naruto's eyes widened, wondering if it was a coincidence or if they had timed the invasion with their departure. If it was the case, they might be dealing with more serious issues. XXX. There was a lack of organization at the military headquarters in Trost, where an officer was shouting for the trainees to get ready while attempting to motivate them. The trainees were scurrying around the headquarters to collect their supplies. Although he was alone and calmly filling up his gas tanks, Naruto was actually anxious because he knew the Titans would breach the walls and that the hole in the gate was simply too large for a hasty repair. In any case, he readied himself and made the decision to use chakra to improve his strength, speed, and movement in this battle. They would simply assume that he was using more gas than usual. Similar to Levi's incredible speed, he could use Sage Mode if he needed to. But other jutsu uses probably wouldn't be a good idea because everyone is scared right now and their emotions are running high. Erwin would advise him not to use his ostentatious jutsu because they would draw unwanted attention and cause people to overreact. A very anxious and frightened captain addressed the 104th Corps trainees as they lined up in the square of headquarters after receiving their supplies. Just do what you were taught. Divide into groups. You will receive orders, kill Titans, and resupply combatants as directed by the garrison. The officers behind him were staring everywhere but at the trainees as the captain, who had brown hair and a brown beard, yelled. His eyes were frightened and he was perspiring nervously. The vanguard will be formed by garrison intercept forces, he shouted. The middle guard will be formed by trainees under the leadership of the supply team. The rear guard will be composed of the garrison's best troops. Messengers have also reported we've neutralized the advance team. The Titans have entered the city after the outer gate was breached. He paused to give it some thought before saying, in other words, the armored Titan may appear at any time to destroy the inner gate. I knew it. This is gonna be a shitstorm soon. Who knows how many have died already, Naruto thought, clenching his fists in frustration as murmurs of incredulity spread throughout the crowd as many trainees started to become scared. Quiet. The vanguard is interacting with them right now, until the evacuation is finished. Our only goal in this battle is to protect Wall Rose with our lives. Desertion in the face of the enemy is punishable by death, as you are all aware. Make a note of this and keep fighting until the end. Rejected. When he was finally done, the now anxious trainees gave him a hearty salute. After that, the trainees hurried to get ready to leave. They were informed of their teams and positions. Some, like Mikasa, were transferred to the rear guard, while the majority were moved to the middle guard. Naruto, on the other hand, was placed somewhere else, which infuriated him. He was assigned to protect the supply team and headquarters. It was horrible. He was an assault-in-your-face frontline fighter, not a glorified gatekeeper to the headquarters. He wanted to be out there with his comrades, bleeding and fighting hell. Escorting civilians would be better. The fucking captain was adamant that someone be present to guard the headquarters, and who better than the top third of his class and the Scouting Legion sponsor? Perhaps the individuals already assigned to the position? He couldn't even run supplies? As everyone hurried to their positions, Naruto stood in the middle of the plaza, his arms crossed, and he glared at the menacing rising smoke toward the outer gate. Trainee Uzumaki. Yes, Captain? Naruto asked, turning to face the speech giver who had summoned him. You will be stationed on the roof of the headquarters north entrance, and you will defend it with your life. Proceed and await additional orders. Sir, may I say something? Naruto gritted his teeth. The captain said curtly, granted. Why am I not assigned to a squad or out in the middle guard for this assignment? Naruto could hardly conceal his annoyance. We are already overburdened, with the vanguard all but destroyed, and we need people with your level of expertise to safeguard the supply team. You'll have to get by. Dismissed, the captain said, heading to the storage area. Naruto muttered, fucking stupid ass. Nevertheless, he proceeded to his position. He became even more enraged. With his arms crossed and his legs crossed, Naruto sat on the roof of HQ over the north entrance. Watching the battle from a distance as the smoke plumes doubled, he could see several silhouettes that he knew were Titans moving around, and he scowled as he saw what he knew to be carnage. If he were Kiba, he bet he could smell the blood and hear the screams, which made him feel worthless. Erwin said, the Scouting Legion always made sure he was at the front of everything, but they knew about his abilities and were okay with them, or they would probably have a fit, try to kill him, and examine his body. As the clouds started to gather into storm clouds, Naruto felt a sense of imminence as he sat staring at the battle in front of him. Rain started to fall, soaking him. He didn't like it. Naruto is one of the more superstitious shinobi. It didn't feel like rain that was purifying, it was a feeling of utter sadness. It was like fiery fury. The rain continued to beat like a drum until your death, making it feel like a death march. This marked the start of an execution XXX. It has been 2 hours since the colossal Titan broke through the gate and vanished, and the bell signaling the evacuation of all civilians has sounded. Not a single Titan had come to the headquarters, so Naruto decided it was time to go there to get new orders. He heard a troubling conversation as soon as he walked into the headquarters. The supply room won't be able to be held by itself, he probably heard a trainee say. Please, Captain, remain. Another cried out as he started to move more quickly toward the door to open it. Naruto heard the captain say, move out of the way. I must organize the reinforcement squads. Naruto broke the high tension at that precise moment by opening the door. Captain, where are you heading? With a slight glare, Naruto said, we must defend HQ so the remaining troops can get their gas and retreat. Are you going to the inner gate, where it is safe? Inquired another trainee. As though caught red-handed, the captain's expression was one of shock before he started to yell, What are you saying? This is procedure. It is our duty as soldiers to follow procedure. No. The captain and every soldier in the room turned to look at Naruto in disbelief. However, he simply stood there and glared at the captain. Another word and I'll be forced to punish you and deem you traitor right here, the captain shouted, pulling out a sword. Despite the captain pressing his quivering sword against his chest, Naruto moved forward to give the captain a more intense glare. Captain, what was it that you said? Desertion in the face of the enemy is punishable by death. What are you doing now, Captain? Naruto asked. You said it is our duty to follow procedure. Well, the current procedure is to protect the supply team to resupply the vanguard so they can retreat, instead of being isolated on the buildings like they are a meal served on a plate, Naruto yelled. Or are you willing to abandon hundreds of men and women because you are a coward? Naruto asked with a menacing glare. Every soldier except Naruto winced as the captain yelled, silence, in a hysterical manner. He started to move past the sword and the captain in the direction of the supply area, saying, I was told these words long ago, Captain. Those who abandon the rules are trash. This is true. But those who abandon their comrades are worse than trash. Naruto picked up 4 bags and loaded them with blades and fresh air tanks. He returned to the supply team and gave them a bag each. I may be trash to someone like you, but I'm perfectly fine with being trash in a coward's eyes, who is less than trash, he said, turning to face the stunned captain, whose face was frozen in a state of nervousness and anger. I'm not going to abandon my comrades. I'm going to do my job because someone has to, and that obviously isn't you, Naruto said as he pulled out his swords and opened the door. Naruto gave a firm order, saying, You 4 go run those supplies, you 4 guard them. But the Titans, a supply team member whispered. Naruto pivoted to confront the group. The captain continued to gaze at the wall before him in disbelief. I know you were scared, but think of your comrades out there that have been fighting. They're just as scared as you are. But they need the tools to fight. You need to help them. You do that, and you help yourselves, since they will go back to killing Titans. I will protect HQ to make sure no Titans enter and to keep the window open for you all to run supplies. Now go. The trainees responded with a loud, H-high, and an unexpected salute with a respectful nod. The garrison members chose to obey his commands. He stated that they wouldn't be able to live with themselves if they followed the captain, even though it might not be the safest course of action. Naruto turned to the shell-shocked captain after they had departed. He was still brandishing his sword, but it was shaking from his verbal abuse. Naruto gestured toward the door, saying, Go ahead, sir. The captain asked quietly. Perplexed, Naruto put a hand on the captain's flinching shoulder and said, Go, organize the reinforcement squads, but let me leave you with something I told someone else. It's okay, be selfish, be cynical, be cowardly, make excuses, leave others behind, run away, it's all right. With wide eyes, Naruto left the captain and went outside, saying, Because I'll be out there fighting so that you can do those things. It still felt like the prelude to an execution, and the rain was still coming down. However, he continued to move. He noticed that 8 soldiers were waiting for him near the main entrance. Alright, I'm gonna go out and scope things out. If there are any Titans, I'll draw their attention so you can run those supplies. Got it? He said, nodding to them. When they nodded back, he took a deep breath. He clenched his teeth and swung the door open. Naruto leapt to the neighboring rooftop and peered around. 8 Titans over 10 meters were making their way toward headquarters a few blocks to the northeast. They probably had a few smaller ones with them too, along with the guard and supply team. He returned to the door and said, Alright, head toward the vanguard in a northwest direction. There are Titans coming from the northeast. I'll distract them after I leave. Count to 20 and head out. Don't stop until you reach those who need supplies. Naruto yelled at the end as he fled. He used chakra to improve his movement. As he landed on a rooftop, he sent it flying, launching himself at great speeds in short bursts. With a leap and a surge of chakra, he was on a 13-meter Titan. In a matter of seconds, he struck it with his feet on its forehead to brace himself and his swords in its eyes. He ran around the writhing, in agony Titan's head to the neck, keeping the chakra flowing, and finished with a cut to the neck. He leapt from the tumbling Titan to the next 9 meters. As it approached him, Naruto launched a cable to the street using his 3DMG. But it was barely noticeable to most people. A stubby hand swatted him toward the ground, and he rolled when he hit the ground beneath its legs. Then, using a chakra-enhanced leap, he leapt straight up to the neck and sliced it open. As the supply team started to advance to the front, Naruto in the air hauled himself and his equipment to a rooftop. All right, they're there. Looking back at the Titans, Naruto thought, now, to make sure I have their attention. Naruto leapt from the roof and gracefully swung around the Titans with his equipment. He would constantly be just out of reach to tease them in the end. He led them into the square outside the headquarters. They were about 13 in number 6 or so, or over 8 meters, and 7 are in the 3A 4-meter class. After landing on the headquarters roof, Naruto made a clone, who sprinted to the summit of the tower in order to collect natural energy. The clone assumed the lotus position and started to meditate. Naruto carried out the same action. His eyes began to shade orange. After a few seconds he opened them, and instead of his usual blue eyes, he saw the yellow horizontal eyes of a toad. He got up and ran off the roof to battle the horde in front of him as the rain finally stopped. "Come get some," he exclaimed, grinning determinedly. XXX for the middle guard and the vanguard. Things were not looking good. They achieved some of their objectives. It felt hollow, but they managed to hold off the Titans long enough for the evacuation of the civilians. The majority of the main force was made up of trainees. After many veterans were killed, the others either reached the walls or perished. However, a lot of people were stuck on buildings because they were afraid of running out of gas and were attempting to devise a strategy to reach headquarters, but it appeared unfeasible as they observed Titans approaching. They were numerous, too many. Then they learned about Team 34. All of them were killed, including 6th-ranked Eren, with the exception of Armin, who was too distraught to intervene. If they weren't previously disheartened after hearing the news, Mikasa slowly got up and started to leave. She asked in a lifeless voice, "Marco, if we eliminate the Titans swarming HQ, then we can refuel and climb the walls, isn't that right?" "Why yeah, that's right, but even with you here there are too many," he replied. Everyone's attention was drawn to a trainee who pointed and said, "Oi, what is that?" A group of 6 approached them, 2 garrison soldiers and 4 trainees. They also had bags with them. "Isn't that some of the members of the supply team? Oh my god. Finally. Got some gas tanks, share them." One of them gasped as the group landed. Looking worn out from the sprint, they didn't stop, and 2 garrison members gave their lives to ensure they could keep going. They did their best to distribute it equally. However, they did decide that the new tanks should go to the best fighters first. 10 tanks and 2 large ones for gas transfers were included in each bag. That allowed everyone to at least get some gas, but it was barely enough to fill everyone's quarters. "So what took you guys so long?" Jean inquired. As they attempted to respond, the group turned away from the inquisitive and accusing looks. "Well, we were afraid and we were left on our own with no guards. The captain ordered everyone to leave HQ and head up the walls." Several trainees cursed the captain at this point. One trainee grinned and remarked, but Uzumaki confronted the captain and convinced us to run the supplies. Talking back and disobeying an officer shocked some people. The balls on this guy, holy shish tea. Then, in a panic, Sasha recalled, "Oh yeah, Naruto was assigned to guard HQ. Wait a minute, where is he?" Naruto was a good friend, a cool guy, and a skilled fighter. She hoped all was well with him. Many of the trainees agreed with the sentiment. In response to the many screams and whispers, one of the garrison guards said, "He is at HQ fighting the Titans. Before we left he scouted things out and warned us of the numerous Titans heading toward HQ, so he told us he would distract them while we ran the supplies to you all." "Holy crap. Damn. What are we waiting for? We gotta go. He's fighting them by himself. He has got to be dead already. Yeah, no one can last this long. HQ has to be swarmed with them by now. What's the point? We got gas, we should just leave." After hearing enough, Mikasa made the decision to leave, but not before saying, "We have to go. If you don't fight you die. I am disappointed in all of you. You are all spineless cowards." Everyone was stunned by this. The graduating class's top student, who was expected to be the best in an unknown number of years, had called them cowards and expressed her disappointment in them. Jean murmured, "What's disappointing here is your vocabulary. Was this supposed to be an inspirational speech? This is your fault. Eren, Naruto. Hey, were we trained to let our comrades fight alone? Do you really want to be cowards?" he exclaimed, taking a deep breath before he and Connie trailed behind Mikasa. He was followed by the garrison guards and the supply team. "I wouldn't want that," Reiner muttered, and his team trailed behind them. "Come on, coward, wimp, idiot," Sasha yelled at the others, and then she took off, with the others trailing behind. "XXX. Ah!" exclaimed Naruto in agony. For a brief moment, he stumbled and lost his sage mode, which cost him. After being swatted by one of the Titans, he crashed onto a table and entered a building through a window. He had large splinters and glass fragments piercing his arms and back in multiple places. "Ha, damn it," Naruto swore as he felt the clone vanish, returning him to sage mode and somewhat easing his agony, pulling out as many pieces as he could. He stumbled to his feet. The Titan that swatted him attempted to grab hold of him, but he overcame the pain and slid beneath the big hand thanks to his increased strength from Sage Mode. The Titan pivoted and stooped to touch him again. Naruto used the Toad Sage's strength to grab the hand by the fingers and forcefully flipped the 9-meter class over his shoulder and onto its back. It twitched and attempted to rise, but Naruto was there at the neck, cutting it off with a deep cut. Naruto observed his surroundings. The Titans began scuttling around the structure to gain entry. The main entrance was broken by a few of the smaller ones while the bigger ones were being handled by him. Naruto was certain that more were coming, even though there were only 3 large ones left. Naruto crept into the steam emanating from the many Titan corpses he had killed. He followed the steam to enter headquarters covertly and rid it of the smaller ones. The ones inside an enclosed space will be an issue, but the ones outside will be problematic. That is more challenging. Not for Naruto, though the supply room is ideal for shinobi because it is dark and has high ceilings. The Kyuubi was tending to his injuries and replenishing the blood he had lost, but in Sage Mode, he seems to operate more slowly. Perhaps he dislikes natural energy. The old Toad Sage Fukasaku was rejected by him. He heard the distinctive sound of the 3DMG as he was getting closer to the front entrance. Have they returned yet? He saw numerous soldiers smash into the 3rd-floor windows, their sudden appearance and speed rendering them unintelligible. Naruto muttered, "Holy shit, that took some guts." When he turned around, he heard 3 Titans approaching with thudding footsteps. One was close to the windows they entered, and the other 2 were near the side of the 3rd floor where they entered. Shit. I gotta make it in time. Despite the fact that he still had multiple shards, including a 6-inch piece stuck in his thigh, he continued. He targeted the recently arrived Titan by the windows. Take this. Naruto almost severed the 11-meter Titan's head while using his wind element unconsciously and the gas at full throttle in order to gain a better view of the other 2, who had just used their heads to smash a hole in the wall. He pushed off the head. Damn it, if they reach in the hole they can grab them, Naruto exclaimed to himself. It happened just as he was ready to launch his cables. The 2 Titans next to each other were hit across the head and down the street by a haymaker that was delivered by a Titan more than 15 meters tall, with long shaggy brown hair, elf-like ears, odd jaws, and green eyes. Holy crap, now that is a punch, exclaimed Naruto when he heard 3DMG. He noticed that Mikasa, Armin, and Connie had also just come in through the window. He swung into the big hole that was made after letting Sage Mode fade and realizing that he was sick of smashing through windows. Connie exclaimed, "Naruto, you're alive." That fact seemed to astound everyone else as well. He didn't look very good, though his clothing was covered in bloodstains, tears, and multiple gashes from the collision. Yeah, fighting against over 15 or more Titans, if those new ones mean anything, is pretty tough, he sighed. 15, or more? Damn, Reiner inquired, how many did you get? Before he could say, more importantly, the hell is up with that Titan? He answered absently, well, except for those 2 that big guy punched, all those smoking corpses was my work. Oh, guys, that is a deviant that fights other Titans, exclaimed Connie. What? A Titan that fights other Titans? When Jean said, that sounds like a dream, Mikasa interrupted. Among the roars and rumbling outside, she concluded, it isn't a dream, we need to keep it out here to keep fighting those outside. I don't care if it's a deviant or not, this is our best chance for survival. Then, without waiting for a response, Naruto walked down the stairs, leaving everyone perplexed. Hey guys, I'll be right back. Connie scratched his head and said, okay? XXX. Damn, I forgot about those smaller Titans. I got to get them out of the supply room. I hope there wasn't anyone left in there, Naruto murmured to himself. As he neared the floor to the supply room, he heard the loud footsteps of the numerous Titans wandering about the dark room. He ran up to the support beams, staying in the shadows until he was above a Titan. He ran soundlessly across the beams. He lowered himself to the back of the neck. After waiting until no one was staring at him, it was killed with a slash. He leapt swiftly back into the shadows and back to the beams in what appeared to be bewilderment. Every Titan turned to face the sound of their fallen comrade. They all started to move in its direction to look it over. Then, before they could see him, Naruto leapt back and killed the person in the rear of the group. From that point on, it kept happening until only one remained. It looked up at Naruto as he was stepping into position. It suddenly leapt up and attempted to grab Naruto, causing his eyes to widen in shock. Despite not grabbing him, the hand struck Naruto. As he leapt away from it, he lost his swords and rolled to the ground as a result of the blow. With a gaping jaw, the final Titan in the room charged at him and pounced at his position. Naruto pushed himself away, but he could feel a number of splinters and shards pierce his skin. He was in excruciating pain from the 6-inch glass shard wound in his thigh. All of his wounds were made worse by the fall. As the Titan rose to its feet, He stood wearily. They turned to face one another and gazed at one another. Both of them charged at an unheard signal. Naruto ducked beneath the massive arm that swung at him. After removing a kunai from each sleeve, he slashed both Achilles' tendons while continuing to move beneath the legs. The Titan's legs failed and it collapsed on its face. Running up the fallen Titan's back, Naruto hammered both kunai into the nape of his neck. After holding them there for a few seconds, he cut the neck open. Standing on the rotting Titan, Naruto took a deep breath. He left, stored his kunai, and took a seat by the big gas tanks. When he heard the sound of an elevator, he finally started to pull out the shards while leaning against them. "Oh, you guys were seriously gonna come down through the elevator?" Naruto yelled along with what sounded like a sheepish groan. He heard some gasps and shocked noises. Jean yelled, "Naruto, you were down here?" to him. When he and 6 other people descended the stairs, they discovered Naruto leaning against the tanks they had been attempting to reach and 7 rotting Titans, extracting objects from his body's wounds. He deadpanned, causing drops to fall. "Where did you think I went? To take a piss?" he asked. The people in the elevator were also taken aback, especially Armin. Just as he was about to inquire as to how he did it, he noticed him trying to extract a big piece of glass from his thigh. Perhaps the inquiries can wait until they've had some gas. XXX. In the supply room, conversations were positive. Morale was raised, blades were replaced, and gas tanks were filled. Naruto had already replenished his tanks and changed his blades, but he was only now getting rid of the splinters and shards, at least the bigger ones. The rest would require tweezers. "Hey, I've been meaning to ask, where is Eren? I haven't seen him. Isn't he here?" Naruto asked, causing Mikasa and Armin to tense up. He got no response, but the uneasy look on their faces said enough. Naruto simply turned to leave, saying, "I see." He felt Eren's signature just before the Titan killer punched those 2 from the hole, so he wasn't sure what to believe. He knew that he felt Eren, but he was too preoccupied with his fight to notice it for long. Eren is still alive. He simply doesn't know where. It might be someplace disagreeable. I hope he's not inside a stomach. However, a few went outside after refueling for 10 minutes. Armin, Mikasa, Naruto, Jean, Annie, Reiner, and Bertholdt made the decision to see how the Titan that had engaged in combat was doing. They discovered something startling. Several Titans were consuming it. Naruto said, "Are you serious? They're tearing it apart." He kept the bandages on for appearance, but his wounds have essentially healed. Mikasa fell asleep, saying, "I had hoped we could learn something from it, but now we should kill the other Titans clinging to it." Reiner offered the idea. "It helped us out, it could keep fighting for us." "Are you serious? We should leave over the inner wall while we can," Jean yelled. Annie noted that, "If we use it though, it could be better than any cannon." Naruto agreed, amazed. "You got a point there. I mean, did you see how hard it punches?" That's the deviant that ate Thomas," Armin said almost fearfully as a lanky 16-meter deviant emerged. The Titan killer roared out of nowhere. It charged. Even though a number of Titans were hanging off it, it charged at the deviant without arms and gave it a severe neck bite. Then it swung it like a bat at the Titans in the area, crushing a number of them. The deviant was thrown, severing its head in the process, and its body collided with the walking Titan into a building down the street. When another large Titan approached using only its jaw strength, it roared in defiance as it concluded its fight and saw no more Titans. Then, with trepidation, Jean said, "Look, it doesn't need help." Then, as though it heard him, it fell on its face. "I guess it finally exhausted itself. We should get going. A Titan is still a Titan." "Jean," Naruto muttered. He questioned, What is it?" But Naruto simply pointed. A spot in the nape of the neck deteriorated more quickly as the Titan killer's body started to rot as the steam cleared. There was a body there as well. The person appeared to sit up on his knees mechanically, but his eyes were closed due to unconsciousness. Mikasa gasped in surprise, happiness, and too many other emotions to describe. With her equipment, she launched herself down right away. Before he fell, she climbed onto the steaming corpse and gave him a hug. She started to shake abruptly, and Naruto watched as the sobs and tears started to fall. It was clear to Naruto why Mikasa was so happy. Eren was still alive. He was inside the Titan killer. He was directly across from him, which is why he sensed him in Sage mode. Naruto assisted Mikasa in carrying Eren to the HQ tower's roof, where she sobbed and held onto him out of fear that he would vanish. As the others watched in shock, trying to make sense of what had happened, he stood off to the side. As he observed the bodies of more than 20 Titans, Naruto asked no one, "Does this mean that Eren did all of this? That he was the Titan?" His secret power was no longer unique to him. The sole issue is now, what do they do? Tension is nothing new to Naruto. For the majority of his life, he has been going through it. Being a shinobi comes with a price. That did not imply that he was in a comfortable situation. No, with everyone staring at his back, It was really awkward who was on his back, though, wasn't actually him. Eren was still unconscious from his, so he was carrying him on his back leave the Titan killer's throat. Everyone else who saw the incident was looking at him nervously, but Mikasa and Armin were staring at him with concern. They were getting ready to ride the elevator down Wall Rose's inner wall. The silence was what was most unsettling. Nobody wanted to discuss what they had just witnessed. Naruto decided to take action in an attempt to defuse the situation. Through whistling a melody. As you may know, Naruto was never known for being diplomatic. He started to perspire under the disbelieving glances he was receiving, and his whistling eventually died out completely. "What? It was getting really awkward with the silence," he replied. "Eren comes out of a Titan alive and was probably controlling it or could turn into it at any time, and you just whistle?" Jean yelled. "At least I broke the silence," murmured Naruto, sulking and averting his gaze. They stepped off the elevator and onto the safety of the ground outside of Trost as soon as it stopped, only to turn around and find themselves encircled by scores of soldiers brandishing their swords. "Captain, coward." Vermin was in the middle of the formation, looking terrified, as Naruto noted with irritation. "Trainees, leave Eren Yeager here while you go to your posts. You are refrained from repeating the events that you have witnessed under threat of treason. Dismissed," he cried, his voice trembling with fear. After a brief period of indecision, the trainees made the decision to depart. When they saw that not all of the trainees had left, the soldiers cautiously made room for them. Mikasa was starting to draw her swords, Armin was attempting to rouse Eren, and Naruto still had Eren on his back, almost growling at the captain. Vermin yelled, "Trainees! Why have you not followed my orders? We will execute you, along with that monster," in a panic. Naruto yelled back, "Fuck you, you piece of cowardly shit." But no one saw his canines lengthen and his pupils move into slits. "You abandoned your post. You left the supply team to die. You should be executed for deserting your post." "Shut up!" Vermin shouted, turning to face the many soldiers who were whispering to one another and staring suspiciously at him. At that moment, Naruto heard a voice, low at first, then louder until he could make out the words, "I'll kill them all." When Naruto looked at the voice, he was shocked to discover that Eren was grinning. "Every last one, I'll kill all of them, more," he muttered disturbingly over and over. Everyone stared in disbelief and was silent. Eren was clearly unconscious even though his eyes were open. However, the smile persisted. Eren?" asked Armin hesitantly, his eyes wide with shock. He slowly raised his head from Naruto's shoulder, and everyone watched. He stopped smiling, as if life had returned to his eyes when he gasped in surprise. He almost fell off Naruto's back. It was obvious that he had no idea where he was or how he got there. Naruto heard Mikasa yell, "Eren!" as she kept her swords out in her front to the soldiers. "Eren, can you stand? Can you understand what I'm saying? Tell them everything you know, I'm sure then they will understand," Armin pleaded. "Armin. Naruto. Why are you carrying me? Mikasa. Why do you have your swords out?" Eren asked, looking around from Naruto's shoulder. His uneasiness was evident, as he obviously had no idea what was happening. "Did you hear that? Yeah," he said, "I'll kill them all, he's going to devour us?" Naruto looked away from Eren and glared at the soldiers who were muttering nonsense. Eren wouldn't. As a Titan, he never did. He pursued Titans only, correct? When Naruto saw the relief on Captain Vermin's face, he almost growled again. Everyone was distracted from the man's cowardly desertion by Eren's outburst. "Trainee Yeager, Ackerman, Arlard and Uzumaki," the captain yelled again, concluding angrily, "What you are doing is an act of treason. We may decide to execute you right here. You have no fucking right to decide that, coward." Everyone turned to stare at Naruto, who was upset, as they hadn't anticipated his level of rage again. Nobody saw the darkening of his whiskers or the red that was starting to seep into his irises, turning them a shade of violet. "Uzumaki. If you make a single move, or if any of you lie to us, we will fire high explosive round at you. We will not hesitate." Naruto muttered angrily, "You son of a," as Eren watched in confusion. "Answer me at once. Eren Yeager, what are you? Are you human? Or are you a Titan?" "I don't understand the question," Eren replied. "He's pretending to not know anything. Monster. Try that again and I'll blow you to pieces. It just takes an instant. You won't have time to reveal your true form," the frenzied Vermin exclaimed. "True form?" asked Eren. "Plenty of people saw you," he yelled with disbelief, "as you emerged from the Titan. Humanity has permitted an unknown creature like you to infiltrate Wall Rose. Even if you are trainees given to us by the king, the safest course is to eliminate the threat immediately. My thinking is correct." "It is not you, deserter," Naruto angrily retorted, making Vermin recoil and the soldiers stare in bewilderment. "I gave you a chance to redeem your cowardice, but you spit on it by acting like a hysterical toddler who just saw a ghost," Naruto said, his features gradually becoming more feral as his anger started to seep into a second well of chakra. "I had to defend HQ while you ran to the inner wall. If anyone has to be executed, it's you, shithead." "Enough. The armored titan could appear any minute and destroy the inner wall. Humanity is on the brink of annihilation. Do you understand? We can't waste any more time or troops on you. And you shouldn't be in charge of any of them. You are too stupid and scared to lead them," replied Naruto. "I will fire a he round without hesitation," Armin begged the irate blonde. "Naruto, stop, you aren't making things better. This fucker doesn't know what he is talking about though. He is a coward who is too scared to think or see what is right," Naruto retorted, turning to face Armin. "It is true that they aren't being cooperative and they aren't being forthcoming with information. You are right, sir. You are wasting time and troops," said a silver-haired woman named Riko to Vermin's right. "We have no information to give. We don't even understand what is going on. How can we explain it to you, dumbass?" Naruto yelled after hearing her, earning her a tick mark, and his frank and irate remark, "Naruto is not very logical when he is in his first Jinchuriki state." A soldier at random yelled, "Captain, this is our chance. If we dissemble him while it is pretending to be human. If necessary, I am willing to demonstrate at any time. If anyone would like to experience it firsthand, I invite them to be the first to approach." Mikasa then made the dark decision to move forward and said, "My specialty is tearing through flesh." She then raised her swords a little. Vermin clearly recoiled as a soldier on his left named Ian said, "Captain, Mikasa Ackerman was in the rearguard with this. She is worth 100 other soldiers, and Naruto Uzumaki is sponsored by the Scouting Legion, so his skill is recognized by them. Corporal Levi was the last to be sponsored by them. Losing them both would be a critical blow to humanity." "Guys, what is going on here?" Eren asked again. "Mikasa, Naruto, you can't fight another human. Where would we run within these walls?" Armin begged again, but he was ignored. He responded, "It doesn't matter who I fight, I won't let anyone kill Ren. I do not need another reason." Naruto also replied, "And I won't abandon my comrades. We have to talk this through. Just forcing our way through won't work." Armin yelled, "No one knows what is going on. They're being ruled by fear." Vermin shouted, "I'll ask you again," and Mikasa and Naruto gave him irate looks. "Eren Yeager, what are you?" Eren became tense on Naruto's back and trembled a little before stopping, lifting his head above his shoulder, and yelling, "I'm a human." After a few moments of silence, Vermin raised his arm and said gravely, "I see, then don't hate me for this." The trainees and the two lieutenants next to him gasped in shock. He raised his arm completely upright and said, "There is no avoiding it. No one can prove that they are not monsters." The desperate situation overshadowed Naruto's snarling, "You can't just decide this on a whim, you cowardly shit." His eyes were now completely red. "Naruto, carry Eren, we are going up," Mikasa exclaimed as she rushed over to Eren. Eren quickly denied, saying, "Wait, stop." Naruto was taken aback when Eren clenched his head, flinched violently, and fell off his back. Naruto was shocked when he abruptly got up and grabbed Mikasa and Armin, who were standing in front of him. However, he caught a glimpse of Vermin lowering his hand to signal the cannon to fire. His attention was drawn to his right by a cannon shot. Naruto was about to strike the round with a kunai to potentially detonate it early when he was stopped by a familiar flash of pale yellow-green lightning. Abruptly, a figure loomed over him. A jumble of sounds too loud and numerous to distinguish took place, and a lot of hot air enveloped him. What stopped the shot from exploding away from them? He heard and felt it. Though not thick enough to obscure the sight above him, steam filled his vision. As Naruto stared at the rib cage that encircled Mikasa, Armin, and himself, his face was filled with horror and shock. A single-eyed skull, a torso more than a couple of meters high, and a single arm extended toward the freshly fired cannon were all visible above him. It was an unfinished titan with hardly any form and no skin. The outstretched arm was surrounded by muscle, but even that was starting to deteriorate. As his shocked features returned to normal, Naruto whispered to the other two, "Oh my god, you guys are seeing this, right? This a part of a titan?" Armin muttered in shock, "I remember hearing cannon fire and then there was a horrible sound, a shockwave and heat. Are we inside a huge skeleton?" Mikasa cut him off, saying, "That is all we need to know right now. Eren protected us." The arm must have blocked the round, thought Naruto absently as he and Armin nodded. "Hey, you guys." Eren rushed into the rib cage from the back and hurried around it to greet them. Naruto asked, "Eren, What is this? What did you do? Eren responded, I have no idea, but this will decay like any other Titan corpse. As he had predicted, the Titan flesh construct was beginning to decompose. They were able to hide from the steam for a few more minutes as a result. Let's get away from it. Naruto retorted, and go where, Eren? They're still out there waiting for us. He pointed to their surroundings and said, they're probably getting ready to fire on us again, and after this, we don't have much hope for negotiations, not when that coward of a captain is too scared to even think. Naruto concluded by glaring at Vermin. That's true, he acknowledged, but then he clutched the key around his neck and said, but I still have the basement. The basement of my house. My dad said if I'll go there, I'll learn everything this happened to me because of him, too. Naruto tensed up if he was implying what he believed himself to be. Then he and Eren share a trait. Fathers who gave them gifts they didn't want to use. If I go to the basement, I'll probably learn what the Titans really are. Eren clenched his teeth and struck a decaying next to him. Damn it. If he had that information, why did he hide it? Isn't that what thousands of soldiers died to find out? Isn't it humanity's last hope? And he has been keeping it in the basement of our house? What the hell was he thinking? Where the hell has he been for 5 years anyway? He asked, squinting his eyes. I don't know your father's reasons for doing this, but he must have a reason if what you say is true. Then he gave you this power to fight and defend what you hold dear. Don't doubt him unless you find out more, Naruto said, drawing his swords as he faced the soldier's direction. He then reflected on his conversation with his father and added, it's the parents' job to have faith and believe in their kid. But, right now we have other priorities, he said, hardening his eyes and staring past the steam. Eren reluctantly nodded, yeah, but when the Titans started to disintegrate even more and the skull fell, sending dust and steam skyward, they had to retreat while Naruto stood with his swords drawn and facing the soldiers. Mikasa, Armin, and Eren knelt down in a circle. Mikasa and Armin were shocked when Eren abruptly declared, I'm getting out of here. Armin said, what? Where will you go? Away from here and over the wall. I have to get to the basement. Eren responded, once I become a Titan again. Uncertain of his strategy, Armin asked, can you do that? I don't know how to do it myself, but I still think I can. It's like you don't know how you move your own arm back there. My only thought was stopping that shell so that body rotted away, having no other function and served its purpose. This time I'll turn into something stronger, like a 15-meter class, like the one that tore apart those Titans, he said, panting heavily as fatigue set in. Eren, your nose is bleeding. Mikasa cut him off. Indeed, blood was dripping from his nose. His body was overworked. Eren, you aren't in any condition to do anything. Your body. How I feel doesn't matter. I have come up with 2 options. Eren interrupted Armin. At this point, Naruto stopped listening to the conversation. He had long since made up his mind about what he would do. With his hands on his grips and the swords by his sides, he started to approach the soldiers at a deliberate pace. A shadow appeared in the smoke, and the soldiers started to gasp in terror. Some clenched their swords, some backed up a step in terror, and some aimed their rifles when they saw Naruto emerge from the smoke and come into view. Their hearts raced. His blonde hair cast a shadow over his eyes, and his face was expressionless. He was a very menacing figure with his passive-aggressive posture, the swords drawn, the previous incidents, and the smoky backdrop. Captain Vermin exclaimed, terrified beyond belief, so you finally show yourself, monster. I'll do it, I'll give the signal. As he approached the soldiers slowly, Naruto said, my name is Naruto Uzumaki. Don't come any closer, and I am a soldier. I'm warning you. I am a loyal human being with humanity's best interests at heart, he said, releasing the swords from his grasps with a sudden clang and action that startled everyone. Stop. He released his 3DMG from his hips, and the loud clang that echoed when it fell made everyone cringe again. I was found and sponsored by the Scouting Legion, and given purpose I will always protect my comrades, never abandoning them. At last, he halted a few meters from the soldiers in the middle of the square and, without his 3DMG, drew a kunai. Then, without hesitation, he stabbed his hand, causing gasps as the blood splattered the floor. I am a human, bleeding the same red as you all. Vermin flinched in terror as he glared forward with determined blue eyes, raised his heavily bleeding hand to his heart in the military's salute, and yelled. His shirt started to get stained from the blood dripping from his hand over his heart. As a soldier, I decided almost 2 years ago that I would dedicate my heart to humanity. I would offer it up if it meant others would live and humanity would survive, he said. With his powers, Eren can save humanity. I can save humanity. You just have to look past your fear and you will see the truth, he said. Vermin yelled back, prove that he isn't a threat or I'll be forced to eliminate you all. which made Naruto grit his teeth and continued to salute. A shout, "There is no need for proof," called everyone's attention to Armin, who had just emerged from the smoke. "The question isn't what we think of him." "What did you say?" "I'm told that many of you saw him fighting the Titans, and that the Titans swarmed him. That means the Titans consider him food just like us. That is the truth. No matter what we may think or believe," he said. "Eren is a human that can create and control a Titan's body. Imagine what he could do fighting for us. That is better than any cannon, than any sword," Naruto went on. "Maybe he is right, a Titan as an ally? That's impossible, but if we could control a Titan." With that information, the soldiers started to lower their weapons and guards as they tried to process what they had just been told. But prepare to attack. Everyone in the square was taken aback by the call. Before, Captain Vermin appeared terrified and hysterical, but now he was inconsolable. "Don't let them fool you with their clever lies. And don't let him drown you in your fear." Naruto cut him off. "We have no reason to lie. This captain is a coward who would abandon his fellow soldiers if it meant he would live. He is not fit to lead you. He is consumed by his own fear and is too scared to even think. Do not follow his example. Only look at him and you will see the fear all over him." Those who tensed before attacking did, in fact, look at their captain and see what Naruto did, a terrified man who had no choice but to destroy the thing that was frightening him. "We don't understand anything about the Titans. It could be possible for them to sneak in and imitate humans. Don't let your guard down," Vermin yelled once more. Armin paused again when he noticed that some soldiers, but not all of them, raised their weapons once more. He then gave a salute in imitation of Naruto. "I am a soldier," he exclaimed loudly. "I swore long ago to dedicate my life to the revival of humanity. If that pursuit were to cost me my life, I would be glad. If we use his Titan powers and the forces we still have, we could take back this town. With my final breath, I shall wish for humanity's glory, and try to persuade you of his strategic value," Armin said, closing his eyes and gasping for air. Naruto grinned with pride. There is no better way for him to put it. He didn't care that his hand was still bleeding in the salute over his heart. This was about much more. Ian, his lieutenant, started to counsel, "Captain Vermin, I believe we should consider." He yelled, "Shut up," with an increasingly terrified expression. Everyone watched him with wide eyes as he started to raise his hand, not even thinking about the possibilities. He was about to bring it down when someone else grabbed his hand and said, "Stop. As big as you are, you've always been as delicate as a newborn fawn," the voice behind him went on. Commander Pixis, an elderly bald man with hazel eyes and a gray mustache, served as the commander of the southern garrison troops. He appeared to be quite laid back despite wearing the standard military uniform. He was distinguished as the commander by a unique sash. He continued to ignore the startled looks. "Do you not see their splendid salutes?" One even stabbed his hand and held it in the salute, making it pretty damn poetic and awesome. "I can respect that dedication. I've just arrived, but the messengers have kept me abreast of the situation." "You are dismissed, Captain. Go organize the reinforcements. I think we should listen to them." As Armin joyfully fell to his knees, Naruto said with relief, "Thank you, sir, but please excuse my offense." Amused, Pixis said, "Oh, what offense? This?" Vermin closed his eyes in shock, grunting in agony. A fist was in his stomach when he opened his eyes. Naruto's fist in his stomach was lifting him a little off his feet, and his angry slitted eyes were staring into his. He concluded, "Assaulting a cowardly deserting officer whose dumbass shouldn't be in charge," as Vermin fell, clutching his stomach and gasping in agony. "Hey, why not? I like guys like you anyway." His response made many people perspire, and Naruto grinned. Then, gesturing to the trainees, he said, "You four, follow me." XXX as High Commander. Pixis approached the edge of Trost's inner wall. The group consisting of Naruto, Eren, Mikasa, and Armin watched. He sighed as he took a swig of his drink from the flask he carried in his jacket and looked down at the Titans below who were attempting to reach up at him far below. "No luck, huh? I wouldn't mind being eaten by a really beautiful Titan woman." With a drop of perspiration, Naruto wrapped his hand from his self-inflicted wound, even though it was almost healed, thinking, "Reminds me of something Ero Sennin would say." "I see, and if we reach this basement we'll understand everything?" was Pixis's final response after they had explained everything they knew, including the basement. "Yes, will you believe me?" Eren said, still on his knees from exhaustion. Pixis turned to them and smiled as he replied, "As long as you, yourself, lack the absolute conviction, I can't promise more than that. I'll keep it in mind." He was standing with his back to them, looking out over the smoke-filled city of Trost. There were sighs of relief when he said, "But I do take pride in being able to recognize the truth of what I see. I'll guarantee your safety." He swigged from his flask and asked, "What about you, trainee Uzumaki, sponsor of the Scouting Legion? What was your angle?" When he paused and said, "But those who abandon or betray their comrades are worse than trash. I may be trash to some, but a man like that captain is worse than trash. I wasn't gonna let my comrades get killed by that coward who abandoned the supply team." Everyone looked at him in question. "I don't abandon my comrades. I was told as a kid that those that break the rules are trash. This is true." He concluded, turning to face Pixis resolutely, "If we want to defeat these titans, we must stand together. We cannot flee and remain afraid of our own shadows, pointing the finger at one another." He laughed and said, "Hey, you keep showing why I like guys like you." Trainee Arlert, "Was it?" "Yes sir, back there, you said we could use the Titan's power to reclaim the city. Did you really mean that? Or was it just a plea to save your life?" He asked simply. "Well," he paused for a moment before responding, "both what I meant was to have Eren become a Titan and move that boulder in the square, and seal the gate." He glanced down, "But it was just an idea. I thought I could at least get them to consider using Eren's power to find a way out of our predicament." Armin went on to explain, "But of course I wanted to survive," as Pixis grunted and turned back to face the city. With cynical amusement, he repeated, "You wanted to survive. I can trust those words more than any others." Then Pixis turned to face Eren, knelt at eye level, and addressed him as, "Trainee Yeager." "Yes?" was Eren's tentative response. He ignored the shocked gasps and asked, "Can you seal that hole?" Well, I don't know," he replied openly. "I don't know much more than everyone else here does, so whether I can do it or not, I can't answer for sure when I don't know." "I'm sorry I asked the wrong question." Pixis laughed and said, "That's true." Then he became serious and asked, "Will you do it? Or won't you?" Gazing at Eren's astonished face, he gestured for him to follow suit. The expansive countryside inside Wall Rose was visible to all. Better yet, consider what will be lost if Trost is not reclaimed. After turning around, Eren resolutely said, I'll do it. I don't know whether I can seal the hole, but I'll do it," he said. As he stood up and patted his shoulders, Pixis said, "Well said. You're a real man. I'll call my strategists, and we'll develop a plan." "No way. But it depends on so many assumptions," cried Armin in disbelief at the spontaneous commander. "And he is just going to run with it? Have some faith in yourselves, guys. That is the only thing holding you all back. Pixis is willing to go all out to save Trost. I can tell you all have to put forth the same determination. If you do, it will work." Naruto spoke as he gazed over the destroyed town. "I think there is a bigger issue though before the plan can be executed," Eren added, "and the commander fully recognizes it." Armin said, "What do you mean? The Titans aren't our only enemy." Naruto said, You realized it, Eren?" "Yeah, I could see it looking back, but now with it all coming together." They were abruptly interrupted when Pixis reappeared with his second-in-command and declared, "There is no time to waste. I will need your help, young soldiers." XXX. After a few minutes, Naruto was seated cross-legged atop the wall just above the gate of the inner wall. He was gazing at Trost's outer wall with his arms crossed over his chest. The breach was barely visible to him. "Yes, Commander?" Naruto asked, acknowledging Pixis, who was standing a short distance away and observing the breach as well. Then he took another swig from his flask while sitting next to Naruto. Naruto accepted his offer, shrugged, and took a sip. It was undoubtedly powerful stuff. It was very nearly as good as Tsunade's or the Toad's sake. He returned it to Pixis, who gave a nod. Pixis finally responded, "So, sponsor of the Scouting Legion, why did Erwin really take an interest in you? I have read your story, and even though many buy it, I don't. Erwin is known for always having a plan A, B, and C. He has a reason for all of his actions, so why you?" "I can't answer that here, but I can show you in the coming fight," was Naruto's final response after he continued to gaze out toward the smoking city. "So you have special abilities like young Eren?" "Not like his. I can't turn into a Titan, but I do have fighting abilities that Erwin thought was extremely important to humanity." Pixis asked gravely, his gaze never leaving the breach, "What would you do if I gave you free reign to do whatever it takes to take back this city?" Replied, "Eren is gonna carry the boulder, right? Well, he is gonna need some escorts. Since he won't be able to fight back, however, I could go directly toward the breach and clear a path for the escorts and hold off the Titans at the breach to prevent any more from coming in to distract them." To make sure he understood, Pixis asked, "So you want to go and clear a path to the hole and hold off the Titans from coming in so Eren can plug it? By yourself?" "Yes, sir. The less people that know outside the Scouting Legion, the better. People are already gonna be frightened by Eren. If my powers go public, things will get worse. Plus, I won't have to hold back," Naruto said simply. Pixis got up and gestured for Naruto to follow him, saying, Very well, come with me." In the middle of the wall, with a view of the many troops still standing from the invasion, they met Eren. Pixis moved forward and coughed into his hand, Eren to his right and Naruto out of sight behind him. His eyes were closed when he abruptly yelled, "Attention!" to stop the terrified and nervous soldiers from shouting and chatting. Then he continued to shout loudly and proudly, "I will now explain the plan to retake Trost. For this mission, our objective is to seal the hole where the gate was destroyed." After giving it some thought, he gestured to Eren and said, "Let me introduce you to the one who will seal the hole for us." Eren saluted and moved forward, saying, "From the trainee corps, Eren Yeager. He is the result of a top-secret project to turn humans into titans. He can create and control a titan's body. He will become a titan, pick up the giant boulder by the gate, carry it over and seal the hole. Your job will be to protect him from titans while he moves the boulder." When Pixis paused to give the information, murmurs began to erupt. These were initially mainly ones of disbelief but later turned into rage and fear. People started to depart because they didn't want to die in front of the titans. A few officers threatened to put the deserters to death, but Pixis roared again. To everyone's surprise, "Here is my decision. I shall pardon anyone who deserts now," was said. Once you succumb to the titans' fear, you can never fight them again. Those who have learned that fear should leave. Those who turned to leave immediately turned back and formed up, silencing those who still desired to depart. And anyone wishing their parents, siblings, and loved ones to feel that fear, should also leave. Given that he had only been here for 2 years, Naruto became excited when he was told, "Let me tell you what happened 4 years ago. About our attempt to retake Wall Maria. As I'm sure you are all aware, that operation was no more than the government's way of dealing with its inability to feed all of the refugees. It was a culling. The reason no one speaks of it is because by sending them outside these cramped walls, we were able to survive within them. All of humanity, including myself, bears the weight of that sin. Because so few escaped Wall Maria, there was never an open rebellion. But what about now? If Wall Rose falls, the sacrifice will be more than just 20%. The territory within Wall Sina won't support even half of the current population. If humanity falls, it won't be because we were devoured by titans, it will be because we killed each other. We must not fall even deeper within the walls. I beg of you, to die right here. Since the titans appeared, humanity has never won against them. Their continuous advance has meant humanity's continuous retreat and loss of territory. But when this mission succeeds, humanity will have retaken its territory from them for the very first time. This will be humanity's first victory against the titans. Compared to all that humanity has lost, it may seem insignificant, but for humanity, that step will be a great advance in our attack on the titans." Naruto sensed the people below were shocked. However, he pivoted and once again confronted the distant breach. "I am aware of my obligations. I have to give them the opportunity to accomplish something. Even if Eren is unable to lift that boulder, Eren should be the center of attention and humanity's hope. According to Pixis, to make him the hero instead of the alleged scourge of life," he thought. "But that isn't my job," Naruto thought again, cutting his eyes hard. "I'm a shinobi to serve the light. I battle in the dark in order to ensure Eren's success. I will fight behind the scenes. I can't wait any longer." As Pixis stated, if this wall collapses, it will be the first of many stones to permanently overthrow humanity. With so many lives at stake, I can't worry about my health or if others will discover my secret. With his fists clenched, he muttered, "This fight ends today. No more ground lost. No regrets." XXX. With seriousness, Pixis asked, "Are you ready?" Naruto checked his 3D MG and equipment, including his hidden shinobi tools, and said, "Yes sir. While everyone is getting ready, I will head out now and clear a path for the elite forces to the breach and hold my ground there." As he started to leave for his strategists, Pixis said, "Good luck, son. We will begin the operation in 5 minutes." Naruto saluted and leapt into the city, saying, "Yes sir." The three made 2 clones, climbed a tower, and started to meditate. The telltale signs of sage mode emerged a few seconds later: a serene face with yellow horizontal pupil toad-like eyes and orange shading. With his arms flowing behind him, Naruto abandoned his clones and charged forward on his feet. Naruto arrived at the boulder in less than a minute, barely more than a blur. Naruto muttered, "All right, time to plow the road." He made 2 more clones in sage mode and crossed his fingers into the shadow clone hand sign. In preparation for cutting a swath to the breach, they spread out at once. A number of titans appeared and started to stagger in their direction. With their swords drawn, the 3 of them charged. They slashed and hacked, spraying the streets with steaming titan blood. Because they were too fast for them to follow, tendons were severed, causing the giants to collapse, and limbs were slashed, making them temporarily immobile, and their lives ended when their necks were severed. In 2 minutes, 7 titans were killed. There are still hundreds to go. As the trio approached the breached gate, They attracted the attention of neighboring titans by continuing to kill them as they went by. Just that morning, he stood over a gate. Once the gate was in sight, Naruto ordered his clones to hold off on some of the areas leading up to it. The first clone would guard the space between the gate and the boulder. The last clone would guard the area close to the boulder, and he would guard the gate. He turned to face the 4 titans approaching him as they departed, slashing the Achilles tendon and toppling the first. He sharpened his eyes and rushed forward. He leapt on the back of the falling titan, using it as a step ladder, and then leapt again to the nearest titan that was reaching for him in midair. As he started to spin, he turned into a human buzzsaw. By activating his gas, he proceeded to cut half of the neck open by slicing and spinning his way up the arm to the neck. He slowed down and whirled his hands, causing his swords to be thrown at another titan. While still in midair, Naruto launched his cables toward its torso and grabbed onto it while it was preoccupied and groaning in agony from the swords embedded in its eye and chest. In order to end that titan as well, he swung around to its back and dragged himself into the neck. Naruto sheathed his swords and ran to the standing titan, one still struggling to stand and crawling toward him, the other trying to grab him. The outstretched hand staggered back from the unexpected blow as he punched it. He leapt and delivered another Sage Mode punch, sending it to the ground while it was still reeling. As he ran to the crawling titan on the ground, Naruto swiftly drew his sword, slashed the neck open, and then sheathed it once more. He created a basketball-sized Rasengan with both hands, which only got bigger as he got closer to the 10-meter titan with slashed tendons. Naruto leapt and yelled as he landed on its crucial point. Udama Rasengan. At last, Naruto took a moment to survey his surroundings and verify the 4 steaming corpses. As he ran to the breached gate in sight, he muttered to himself, "Okay, time to hold the gate." Naruto stared in amazement at the size of the debris at the hole. Finally on top of it, even though the boulder was sufficiently large, the hole was still enormous. Naruto was drawn to the boulder's location by the lightning strike. He was starting to connect with Eren's transformation into a titan. Then there was a big crash. Good, they are getting started. Naruto was pleased that there were no titans approaching or visible as he peered out through the breach into the region beyond Trost. It was odd, but not undesirable. A clone's memories and fresh natural energy suddenly flooded into him. Eren lost control and almost killed Mikasa. The elite forces are protecting him until they are able to remove him, despite the fact that he knocked himself out of commission in the process, or until he manages to control himself, whichever comes first. He was drawn to a low growl, though a diminutive figure in comparison to the taller titans, but still tall in comparison to Naruto, stood out in the plain in front of the breached gate. It was stooped over and about 3 meters tall. Its proportional head was obscured by its shaggy blonde hair, which was odd because most titan heads are proportionately much larger than their bodies. However, its menacing growl was not concealed. Additionally, it was very lean in the leg area but bulky and muscular around the arms and torso. The most frightening aspect of this titan was the presence of sharp-looking claw appendages at the end of its longer-than-usual arms that hung to its shins, in place of the typical human-like fingers like talons. Almost furthermore, Naruto observed that its feet had comparable, albeit shorter, appendages. The bone also protruded from the elbow, but it was sharpened like the talon-like appendages. Naruto absorbed this new enemy with fatigue. This is unlike any titan he has ever seen or heard of. It must be a different kind of titan, similar to the armored and colossal. What could this one do? Was the question. It appeared to have daggers extending from its elbow and blades on its fingers and toes. He received his response when it abruptly roared and raised its head, exposing a murderous expression on its face. Suddenly, it started running directly at Naruto. Naruto assumed a stance in anticipation of its next move. Abruptly, the titan shot forward at full speed. It did not run straight at Naruto, but rather up to the breach and into the hole. It abruptly and surprisingly quickly moved to the wall close to Naruto and leapt to brace itself by planting its feet into the wall before leaping. Its strong legs gave it a speed boost, and Naruto was unprepared for the abrupt direction changes. He was suddenly on the defensive and fell flat to the ground, just avoiding a slash from the talon-like hands. Naruto's eyes widened as he saw the agile titan fly over him, slicing the air with the force of the blow. After it passed, Naruto hurried to his feet and drew his swords just in time to stop another slash when the agile launched itself at him. After bouncing off a wall once more, Naruto's blades were destroyed and he was pushed back slightly by the force of the blow, despite having chakra sent to his feet to hold his ground and the added strength from Sage Mode. Jige. Why you? Naruto clenched his jaw in an attempt to stop the titan when he saw the other hand rear back for a slash. His eyes grew wide. The titan staggered forward as a result of Naruto pushing forward and then ceasing to draw his swords back, leaving it open. Taking advantage, Naruto kicked him hard in the middle. He screamed, "Take that!" as the agile flew into a building that was not near the breach. Naruto experienced a surge of memories and increased natural energy as he swapped out his swords and sheathed one to keep one hand free for additional attacks. He simply dispelled his final clone that was protecting the middle space between the boulder and the breach before being hit out of the air by a seventh and dispelled. It had protected the elite squad from the Titans' onslaught and defeated 6 of them. The only bright spot is that no more Titans are entering the breach because of this odd agile Titan's fear of them. The thing has a very strong aura. It has the appearance of a predator. The highest level of the food chain, similar to a jungle cat protecting itself from predators like snakes. Naruto noticed a change in the debris where it had been sent as he waited for it to move. A sizable portion of the debris was hurled in his direction after running out of the way. Naruto had to stop the agile's talons from slashing him in the face once more. It took more than a minute for the shinobi sage and the hunched 3-meter agile to engage in a furious barrage of blows from both sides, including parries and slashes, punches and kicks. After dodging an overhead slash, Naruto quickly shaped a Rasengan and thrust it into the agile Titan's chest, sending it flying into another building. As his natural energy level dropped, Naruto let out a little sigh. He had one meditating clone left after using the other one during that exchange. He has multiple cuts on his body, and his clothes were torn and slashed when he saw his enemy shift and stand again. He moaned, however. It wasn't in any better condition than him. It had multiple slashes and bruises on its muscular body, including one across its face, in addition to the new spiral-shaped scar on its chest, but it continued to move as if nothing were wrong. But if the steaming wounds were any guide, there wouldn't be if he continued to heal. The ground shook abruptly, as though someone had just taken a thundering step. Noticing that the agile leapt to the building across from him, he leapt to the roof of a nearby structure. He could see the big boulder's top moving in the distance. In other words, Eren picked up the damn thing at last, which implies that he must complete it. The way the two figures gazed at one another across the streets and into each other's eyes was strange, as if they were aware that this was the last blow. Naruto inhaled as the energy passed through, mentally dispelling the final clone. He extended his right hand and sheathed his sword beside him. A clone materialized, and as a ball of swirling chakra materialized, he started to wave his hands around his own. Feeling the threat of the blue ball of energy, the nimble Titan bent forward even more, tensing its legs and flexing its talon-like fingers. It was nearly automatic. There was a loud crack in the street caused by a piece of rubble that fell from a building. As both figures sprinted forward to meet in the center of the street, it was their signal. When Naruto saw the murderous-looking agile Titan's face, time seemed to stand still in a piercing gesture reminiscent of the Chidori. He saw it bring its left hand toward him. He started to thrust with his right hand in Rasengan while leaning back with his left shoulder. While he was running, he observed as the shining talons skimmed over his face, leaving only the smallest cuts running diagonally from his cheek to his forehead between his eyes. The Rasengan struck the forearm, pushing it in the direction of its owner and taking the talons with it. The agile Titan's throat, collarbone, and chest were all punctured by its own talons. Despite Naruto rolling into his fall and crouching, both of them fell to the ground. The agile had been stabbed and was heaving and twitching on the floor. Its wounds were trying to heal, but the talons were in the way, and steam was rising from them. Naruto got back up and approached the formidable foe as another clone emerged to create another Rasengan. He extended his hand once more with wind this time. 4 tiny wind blades that resembled shurikens swirled around the grapefruit-sized white ball. Naruto stared for a moment before launching the lethal technique into the nape of the neck. Now that the 3-meter Titan was at his feet, the wind style Rasengan completed the task of eliminating the aberrant Titan by cutting and grinding away. As the finisher's blood started to steam and evaporate, Naruto straightened up over his now decomposing opponent. However, the thin cut across his face started to bleed a little and was obviously not going away. When Eren eventually entered the street to the breach, his massive Titan figure with many soldiers escorting him became visible. To watch the show and allow Sage Mode to dissipate, Naruto launched a cable and hauled himself up to the roof from the bloody street. Placing his arms loosely around his knees, he sat down with them up. Even though he was exhausted right away, the sense of relief was stronger. He watched as Titan Eren sealed the opening and stopped any more Titans from entering Trost by slamming the boulder into it. Humanity prevailed. The invasion was halted by them. Eliminating the stragglers inside the city was the only remaining task. But why was he uncomfortable? Was it the random appearance of the strange Titan that no one had ever seen? Was it due to its power and strength? Perhaps it was the absence of the armored Titan? Or perhaps it was the presence of a soldier without a head on the roof beside him. Perhaps it was because he was unable to save everyone. That many of the elite soldiers perished despite his clones. Even though they prevailed in the battle, Naruto thought it was meaningless. After this battle, how many families will never get to see a loved one again? How many will just be overlooked? Naruto gazed sorrowfully at the boulder that sealed the hole, blood streaming down his face. In the midst of the choked sobs, tears started to run down his face and blend with the blood. He continued even after witnessing Levi return as the first member of the Scouting Legion. Damn it! Naruto gritted his teeth, clutching his hair and slamming his hands to his head as he choked out the curse. He got up woodenly after a few more seconds and used the remnant of his sleeve to wipe his face. His face was now determined. Despite the stains of blood and tears, there were still lives to be saved and titans to eliminate. He can only stop more people from dying by crying, but it won't save the lives of those he failed to save, because that is what he said he would do when he first arrived. Additionally, he consistently fulfills his commitments.
That's it for today. I hope you guys enjoyed this great story. See you in the next one.